Chapter 740. In the sky, the green aurora borealis flickered and flickered erratically, changing in an instant. The area was quiet, and only the sound of the wind could be heard. After some time, a shrill scream was suddenly heard, and then it stopped abruptly. Who's screaming? What's going on? Everyone was awakened from their sleep. They came out of their tents and gathered to count the number of people. Reynolds isn't here. Go to his tent. Everyone rushed to Reynolds' tent to check, and then they were so scared that they fell to the ground and screamed. They saw that Reynolds had been frozen into a block of ice and had died an unnatural death. There were several terrifying wounds on his body, as if he had been cut by a sharp blade, or clawed by a tiger or lion. What was even more terrifying was that Reynolds was lazy. He didn't even take off his Kevlar bulletproof vest when he slept. But now, even the bulletproof vest had been cut open. Seeing this, everyone exclaimed and retreated. Even Connolly was shocked. Could it be a polar bear attack? But that's not right. There are no beast footprints nearby. There are no polar bears on Dead Silence Island. To be exact, there are no creatures other than humans. The tank guide, said in fear. What kind of creature's claws can easily cut open a Kevlar bulletproof vest? Everyone was scared. At this time, Connolly noticed that Jiang Tian didn't have a tent, which meant that Jiang Tian might be an eyewitness. He asked loudly, Mr. Jiang, did you see something invading? I saw it. Jiang Tian said calmly. This thing should be called Snow Demon. It's more than 10 meters tall, extremely low temperature, and covered in ice. It has 2 big claws the size of washbasins with sharp bone hooks on them. Moreover, it can transform at will and disguise itself as you. It's impossible to guard against it. Even shamans and werewolves can't defeat it. So, you'd better leave quickly. It's too dangerous. Connolly was furious and shouted, Mr. Jiang, are you kidding me? Mr. Jiang, are you making fun of me? The Snow Demon is a monster that only appeared in legends. It's nonsense. Only a village woman would believe it. How can it be true? Jiang Tian found it laughable and said indifferently, so werewolves and shamans are just legends? In fact, Connolly was a shaman. In the eyes of ordinary people, this was also a superstition and legend. As a shaman, he possessed magic power that ordinary people could not explain. However, Connolly did not even believe in Snow Devil. His thinking was so old-fashioned and conventional. This was very laughable. Actually, there was no need for anyone to die. If you had listened to my advice, Jiang Tian said calmly. Connolly, Sean, and Tank were so embarrassed that their faces turned red. It was as if they had been slapped in the face. After all, Jiang Tian had just warned them that this place was dangerous and they had to be careful. But they all thought that Jiang Tian was cowardly, like a woman. If they had listened to Jiang Tian's advice and directly ended the exploration and returned to a safe area, or were cautious, Reynolds would not have died so easily. If you leave now, you still have a chance to live. Otherwise, your chances of survival are slim. Jiang Tian slowly closed his eyes. Connolly was already somewhat depressed and remorseful after Reynolds's tragic death. At this time, Jiang Tian's words touched his sore spot. He could not help but fly into a rage and snort coldly. Kid, I'm leading the team. How can you say anything? How do you know what I'm capable of? As he spoke, he waved his hand and an inch-long flame bloomed between his fingers. He proudly straightened his body. His body suddenly became like a mountain, and his aura was stern as he said in a low voice, What bullshit, Snow Devil? If it touches me, it will also be burned to ashes and turned into sewage. He can actually create flames out of thin air. This is too amazing. Wow! I didn't expect Mr. Connolly to be so powerful. I've long heard that Mr. Connolly is a Caucasus Grand Shaman who can control flames. I didn't believe it before, but seeing it today, it is indeed so. With Connolly here, any snow devil will be scared shitless. When everyone saw this, they clicked their tongues in amazement. The original dejection and fear were swept away, and they became 100 times more confident. Mr. Jiang, do you have such ability? What do you think of my hellfire? Connolly thought that his flame would be able to subdue Jiang Tian, so he asked with a face full of pride. Not very good. Jiang Tian did not even bat an eyelid as he smiled mockingly. Connolly's fire control skills were definitely amazing in the eyes of ordinary people, but in fact, they were just ordinary flames. And the fireball talismans that Jiang Tian created now were comparable to the three true fire. In his previous life, he had even refined the essence of fire and all kinds of strange flames. So, why would he care about it? Not very good was already very polite. Otherwise, Jiang Tian would have said it was rubbish. Good. Very good. When we reach the sword catacomb, I hope you don't ask me for help. Connolly was so angry that his face turned green. He smiled coldly and turned to leave. Connolly is so powerful, but he doesn't care about him. He's too arrogant. He offended Connolly. I'm afraid he's in for it. At least when there is danger, Connolly won't save him. He can just wait for death. But to the others, it was no different from Jiang Tian slapping Connolly in the face again. They were all very disdainful of Jiang Tian. Sigh, his EQ is too low. Seeing this, Anphia also shook her head lightly. Jiang Tian's words just now were indeed unnecessary. No matter what, he should have given Connolly some face and not slapped him in the face. Others might not know, but she knew that Connolly was the strongest in the team. He was even stronger than Sean, Tank, and everyone in the team. Jiang Tian had offended him. If there was really danger, why would Connolly save him? It was useless even if she begged for mercy. Now that Renault was dead, no one was in the mood to sleep. They buried the body a few hundred meters away and left a sign. Then, everyone gathered together to drink and chat. They even sent people to patrol outside in shifts. After all, if there were more deaths, it would be too embarrassing for Connolly and the team. Patter. Patter. While everyone was chatting, suddenly there was a soft sound of footsteps in the distance. Everyone looked in the direction of the sound and could not help but be stunned. Their hair stood on end and their souls were about to leave their bodies. They saw that Renault, who was originally buried in the ice and snow, had actually come back to life and was staggering back. Renault, aren't you dead? Sean frowned and asked. His teeth were chattering. What dead? Renault said angrily. I didn't die at all. I was just frozen. Now that the ice has melted, I naturally came back to life. What about the wounds on your body? Connolly's eyes were a little wary. At this time, the wounds on Renault's body were all gone. This was too strange. After receiving Connolly's signal, Tank immediately ran out to check the place where Renault was buried. Renault's body is still there. He's a fake. He's an evil spirit. Hurry up and kill him. A moment later, Tank yelled as he ran back quickly. Hearing this. Clatter. Everyone jumped up together and distanced themselves from Renault. Someone pulled out a gun, loaded it, and aimed at Renault. Tank, why did you harm me? Reynolds took a step back in fear. He then pointed at the tank and said resolutely, Don't worry. You're a fake. You ate the real Tank and then disguised yourself as him. Connolly, this is a trap. You have to believe me. Tank shouted loudly and anxiously. The real Renault is already dead. The current Renault is a fake. Hurry up and give the order to shoot. Connolly, Sean, Anphia, and many of the guards were frightened. Cold sweat broke out on their foreheads. The situation at this time made their minds confused and they were completely dizzy. How about this, let's go to the place where Renault is buried together and everything will be clear. Connolly had an idea and said loudly. Now, you two throw away your guns and cooperate with the team to verify. Don't look. They're both fake. They're both snow devils. At this time, Jiang Tian said coldly, don't think about shooting. Hurry up and run, or it'll be too late. Swish. Everyone turned to look at Jiang Tian and shouted angrily. You're still making sarcastic remarks at this time. One of them must be real. How can both of them be fake? He must be messing with our morale. He wants us to kill each other or scare us away so that he can enjoy the treasures of the sword catacomb alone. Is he really messing with us? At this time, even Anfia felt that Jiang Tian had gone a bit too far. If the tank was killed, he would have screamed in fear. He was a special forces soldier. But at this time, Anfia suddenly felt that something was wrong. She felt an extreme chill on her back. Yes, the temperature of the Arctic Circle was extremely low, but she was wearing special thermal clothing, so she could still bear it. But at this time, the chill on her back exploded. It was as if tens of thousands of steel needles had pierced through her clothes. She even felt that she could not bear it and her whole body was almost paralyzed. Anfia subconsciously turned her head and screamed in fright. My cute little Princess Anfia. Renaud suddenly opened his mouth and laughed. Crack. Renaud's mouth cracked to his ears. His white teeth were like sharp long knives, spewing out white ice crystals and snowflakes, instantly covering his teeth with a layer of white frost. Renaud's eyes also turned into ice crystals in an instant. There were no whites or pupils in his eyes, just like an ice ball. Then, he roared like a tiger and bit Anfia. Anfia, push him. Connolly reacted quickly. He grabbed Anfia's collar with his right hand and threw her back more than 10 meters. At the same time, he pulled out a small human skin drum from his waist and hit it with a piece of bone as a drumstick. He shouted angrily, Hellfire, in the name of God's punishment. Go to hell. Boom. A fire dragon more than 10 meters long swept toward Renaud with bared fangs and brandished claws. The temperature was very high, as if it could melt gold and iron. Within 100 meters, the ice and snow melted. Everyone felt an extreme heat. At the same time, many of the guards moved. Bullets rained down on Reynolds like rain. Some shamans and priests also attacked Renaud with their magical artifacts. Their attacks were overwhelming and powerful. But the most terrifying thing was that Connolly's hellfire was useless. It was extinguished when it was a few meters away from Renaud. Chapter 741. The temperature plummeted, and an ice wall suddenly appeared, freezing all the bullets in the air. How is this possible? Connolly was stunned when he saw this. He was so scared that his face turned pale as if he had seen a ghost. The human-skinned Hell's drum had an extraordinary origin. It was his most powerful move, but it could not restrain the opponent at all. I'll help. Xiao En wanted to show off in front of Anfia, so he took large strides forward and threw a punch at Reynolds. At this time, he did not hide his powerful werewolf bloodline and stimulated his potential to the limit. The punch was like a cannonball flying across the sky, containing earth-shattering power. Even a small car would be sent flying by it. You're too weak. The demonized Renaud snorted disdainfully and clenched his fists. Chi chi chi. Several 1-meter-long bone blades emerged from the tip of his fists, just like Wolverine after transformation. Then, he waved his arms and slashed the sharp bone blades at Sean without hesitation. The bone blades were crystal clear like ice and jade, but they were incomparably sharp and could cut through alloy steel. It hurts. Sean retreated quickly, but 3 fingers on his right hand were chopped off in an instant. Blood flowed out as he screamed and retreated. In the next moment, Reynolds dashed forward like an arrow, running as if he was flying, drifting like a ghost. He waved his bone blade wildly, causing blood to spurt out. In the blink of an eye, he had killed several guards. At this time, Anfia ran in panic and actually fled to Jiang Tian's location. Renaud chased after a few steps, but a trace of fear flashed across his face. He actually stopped abruptly. Is there something strange about this place? The temperature seems to be much higher than outside. Seeing this, Anfia suddenly realized what was going on. She waved her hand and shouted, "Come here, Mr. Jiang is safe here. Run!" Everyone ran toward Jiang Tian's location. I didn't expect Mr. Jiang to be an expert. I can see that these two are monsters. A young master said, wiping his cold sweat. Humph, what's so great about him? Tank is not a monster. He's mistaken. Connolly was flustered and exasperated. He then shouted, "Bring Tank in too." Is he scared out of his wits? Yes. One of the guards nearby responded and grabbed Tank, who had been standing there motionlessly, and started running. Tank, why aren't you running? Why should I run? Shouldn't you be the one running? Behind him, a sinister voice rang out. It sounded like ice crystals rubbing against each other. It was so ear-piercing that it made one's teeth ache. When the guard turned around to look, he couldn't help but be frightened out of his wits, and fell on his butt. Tank, don't kill me. Have you forgotten that we drank together just now? The tank suddenly turned into a monster that was 8 meters tall, covered in white fur, with a huge head and protruding fangs. Oh my God! The guard's screams stopped abruptly. This was because the transformed tank had already picked up his head and started chewing and swallowing it. At this moment, everyone was dumbfounded. They were so shocked that they almost wet their pants on the spot. As Tank's mouth opened and closed, the guard's brain was splattered. Blood gushed out, and his chest was crushed. In the blink of an eye, he was completely eaten by Tank. Fortunately, everyone had already run to Jiang Tian and entered the area of influence of Jiang Tian's spell formation. The two snow demons looked at Jiang Tian fearfully and didn't follow him. Everyone heaved a long sigh of relief and wiped the cold sweat off their foreheads. They no longer had the slightest bit of disrespect for Jiang Tian. Jiang Tian was able to protect himself, or rather, he was able to find this safe zone. Just based on this point alone, they could only sigh at their own inferiority. If not for Jiang Tian occupying this safe zone, it could be said that they would have become corpses by now. However, in this battle, 7 or 8 of their companions had already died. Moreover, the air was filled with the pungent smell of blood. Fresh blood stained the ground red, reminding everyone that the danger before them was not over yet. The desolate and deathly still ice and snow island, the extreme weather conditions, the strange and powerful terrifying creatures, the endless dangers, and the unknown fate. All of this was like a huge boulder pressing down on everyone's hearts. Everyone's nerves were so tense that they felt like they were about to snap. At this moment, the two strange creatures began to eat the bloody corpses outside the spell formation. Tsk tisk. They sat on the ground, their sharp teeth cutting through the skulls. They even extended their large claws into the skulls and pulled the brain into their mouths. They swallowed the flesh and brain in large mouthfuls. Munch. The sound of chewing and eating could be heard from afar. Everyone's hair stood on end and goosebumps appeared on their skin. After all, those were human corpses. They were their own kind and companions. However, they had now become food for these creatures. At this moment, Renault and Tank had returned to their human forms. They turned their heads from time to time. Their crystal ball-like eyeballs emitted a cold glint as they quietly stared at everyone. Anfia had a very strange feeling. These two monsters had emotions. Yes, it was a kind of disdain and contempt. It was like a high-level life form looking down on a low-level life form. It was as if they were sizing up their food. Did I say you could come in? At this moment, a cold voice sounded out, and everyone turned to look at Jiang Tian in unison. What do you mean? Shaoan's right hand had been bandaged. The scar had yet to heal, but he had already forgotten the pain. He anxiously shouted with a pale face. Is this your territory? This is Russian territory. Why can't we come here? That's right. You only discovered that these two monsters can't come to this place, but this place doesn't belong to you. Do you want to monopolize it? What a joke. The other young master, Quinn, also loudly shouted. Mr. Jiang, I admit that you are an expert, but you are too narrow-minded. Connolly was righteous and held the moral high ground. He said contemptuously, we won't stay here. We won't get in your way if we stay here. Why do you have to be so aggressive and harm others without benefiting yourself? Isn't it good to be kind to others? Anfia also tried to persuade him. That's right, Mr. Jiang. Just help them. After all, we are a team. Oh, now you remember that we are a team. Jiang Tian was so angry that he almost laughed. He laughed mockingly and said, he sneered and said, now you remember to be kind to others. I have repeatedly warned you not to put yourselves in danger, but you thought that I was harming you. Why didn't you treat me as your teammate back then? Why didn't you listen to my opinion? When Xiaoen forced me to jump off the plane, why didn't you say that we were a team? When Connolly wanted to kill me and steal my treasure, did you treat me as your teammate? Renault and Xiaoen even wanted to shoot me. At that time, what did you treat me as? Not to mention that I met you by chance, I had already paid for this trip before I set off. We originally had nothing to do with each other. Why should I help you when you have repeatedly tried to harm me? With every word Jiang Tian said, everyone's faces turned redder. By the time Jiang Tian finished speaking, everyone felt as if they had been slapped a dozen times. Their faces were so red that it was as if blood was about to drip out. That's right. Jiang Tian had warned them more than once before, but no one took it seriously. Some thought that Jiang Tian was showing off his ability to attract Anfia's attention and win her favor. Some thought that Jiang Tian wanted to monopolize the treasure on Sword Tomb Island and scared everyone away. Even if Renault and Tank were in a strange situation and death was close at hand. When Jiang Tian reminded them, no one believed him. They were still high and mighty, repeatedly disrespecting Jiang Tian, mocking and threatening him. But now it was proven that Jiang Tian was not exaggerating at all. They really did not have the ability to deal with danger. If they had listened to Jiang Tian's opinion from the beginning, no one would have died. Even if they had followed, if they had entered Jiang Tian's camp from the beginning, none of this would have happened. Hearing those words, the crowd was speechless. Their faces turned red, and they were extremely embarrassed. They felt so ashamed that they had no way to show their faces. The cruel truth was that Jiang Tian's words were like a heavy slap to everyone's face. It could be said that when compared to Jiang Tian, everyone seemed to be ignorant and stupid to the extreme. Moreover, they were extremely stubborn. What was even worse was that Connolly, Sean, Renault, Tank, and the others had all wanted to kill Jiang Tian. If Anfia had not stopped them, they might have already taken action and shot Jiang Tian to death. But now that danger had erupted, why should they need Jiang Tian's protection? Where was their shame? Where was their shame? Mr. Jiang, I know we are in the wrong. I sincerely apologize to you and ask for your forgiveness. But I hope you can help us. Anfia's face was full of shame. She bowed deeply and sincerely apologized, pleading with tears in her beautiful eyes. In fact, she was partly responsible for the current consequences. In this expedition, the guide was Tank, and the escort team was organized and led by Connolly. They all had the right to speak. But the organizer was Anfia. In fact, she was the biggest leader and the final commander. If she had a worried heart, if she had recognized Jiang Tian's extraordinariness and listened to his advice, so many people would not have died. But Connolly was even more unhappy. This was equivalent to him being recognized as a mistake and slapped in the face. Actually, being slapped in the face was a small matter. The key was that the people who had died all had great backgrounds and were not to be trifled with. They were either shamans or priests, or the young masters of oligarchs. And after the trip ended, it was very likely that someone would be held accountable, and he, Connolly, would be the first person responsible. What kind of teammate are you? If you were a teammate, Why didn't you call everyone over when something happened just now? Connolly was completely desperate at this moment. He wanted to argue even if it was unreasonable. He wanted to paint white as black. You didn't do anything from the beginning to the end, nor did you say anything. You just watched as they were killed. His gaze was cold, and his words were sharp. Every word of his was a stab to the heart. Why didn't the two monsters attack you? Why were you so familiar with their habits even when you saw them? Why were you able to determine that they wouldn't come if you were in this place? Every time he asked a question, he would take a step forward and ask a few questions. He was already facing Jiang Tian and roaring angrily. I even suspect that you are in cahoots with them, or that they are monsters that you have reared. Chapter 742. As soon as he said that, everyone was provoked. They all stepped back and looked at Jiang Tian with fear and hatred. What Connolly said makes sense. That's indeed suspicious. Be careful of him. Some of the guards even pointed their guns at Jiang Tian. They were on high alert, afraid that Jiang Tian would attack them. Put down your guns. Mr. Jiang is not our enemy. Anfia's face turned red from anger at her pig-like teammates. She shouted loudly. Ha, if I wanted to kill you, I could kill you easily. Do you think you're still alive? Jiang Tian laughed. His eyes were full of disdain. After all, this is just our guess. I don't have any evidence. So, let's both compromise. Connolly was emboldened by everyone's support. He threatened in a cold voice, we'll hold you responsible. We'll hold you accountable. We won't kill you, but you have to give up this safe zone. Okay. I'll leave, but don't kowtow to me later. Jiang Tian's eyes were filled with disdain as he looked at Connolly as if he was looking at a fool. Why should I kowtow to you? Connolly said disdainfully. Because once I leave, you'll be killed. Jiang Tian smiled faintly. Ha, come on. The farther you go, the better. You're the biggest threat. Sean snorted. That's right. Leave now. We'll be safe after you leave. Bruce, another young master, snorted. Leave now. Leave now. The group of young masters waved their hands to chase them away, as if Jiang Tian would do them harm. In fact, from their point of view, such a choice was not wrong. Jiang Tian was also made of flesh and blood. If he left, he would definitely attract the attention of the two monsters, right? The two monsters would be full after eating Jiang Tian, so they wouldn't need to eat them. You, wait for your death. Jiang Tian shook his head. He didn't want to say anything more. He took a step forward and walked toward the sword catacomb. The place Jiang Tian was in was indeed extraordinary. It was a land of fire spirits. Deep underground, there was a surge of fire spirit energy. That was why there was heat on the surface. Seabirds gathered and left behind large amounts of bird droppings. This fire spiritual aura was indeed the bane of the snow demons, causing them to be wary and avoid it. However, the fire spiritual chi alone was not enough to stop them. After all, the fire spiritual energy was hundreds of meters deep underground and had been weakened to 80 to 90% by the time it reached the surface. The real counter to the snow devil was a jade pendant that Jiang Tian had drawn with an array that had the effect of buffing and gathering. However, the moment Jiang Tian took the jade pendant away, the entire area would be rendered useless. The two snow devils would still be able to move around freely. Mr. Jiang, please stay. It's dangerous outside, Anfia subconsciously called out. She probably felt that it was not right to do so. After all, this safe zone was discovered by Jiang Tian, but now everyone had chased Jiang Tian away. Anfia, this Mr. Jiang is strange. I think we should stay away from him. Connolly hurriedly stopped her, his eyes cold. Think about it. How did he know that monsters would appear? Why didn't those monsters eat him? Anfia had never encountered such a dangerous situation. She had never seen so many of her companions die at once. She was a little dazed from the shock. In that moment of hesitation, Jiang Tian was already hundreds of meters away. "Mr. Jiang, come back!" Anfia shouted, but Jiang Tian ignored her. "Ha, those two monsters have discovered him. He's going to be bitten to death." Sean was ecstatic when he saw that Tank and Renault had turned to look in Jiang Tian's direction. Yes. That idiot. He just left when we told him to. What a brainless fool. Bruce said mockingly. That's great. If they eat him again, they should be full and let us go. The heir of the oligarch called Quinn slapped his thigh and laughed, but his tears flowed like crazy. Why aren't you eating? Your food is out. Some of the young masters couldn't wait and shouted at the two monsters, reminding them to eat Jiang Tian. In such a dangerous place, under extreme fear and under heavy psychological pressure, the ugliness of human nature was magnified 10 times, 100 times. Many hidden ruthlessness, cruelty, despicableness, and selfishness were all stimulated. The degeneration of human nature was like the night of 100 ghosts and demons. However, everyone's laughter suddenly stopped. Everyone's smiles froze on their faces. Tank and Renault turned their heads in unison and looked over. Their cold eyes flashed with greed and savagery. What are they doing? Quinn screamed desperately. He was so scared that his face turned pale and he trembled. Sean was so scared that his legs trembled and he peed frantically. Tank and Renault had already stood up and were approaching them. Chi! 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 One of the guards held a laser gun and fired at the two snow demons. The two snow demons' chests were pierced and smoke rose. However, they were instantly covered in ice crystals and repaired in the blink of an eye. God! Come and save me. Mom, I want to go home. What kind of monster is this? Even a laser gun can't kill it. It's too scary. At this moment, everyone was wailing in despair. Even Connolly's eyes were filled with fear. He was so scared that he was trembling. This was a high-energy laser weapon. It could be said to be the most powerful portable weapon. It could even cut through steel plate and titanium alloy. This kind of gun was still in the laboratory stage. It was more expensive than a Mi-26. Usually, the army was not equipped with it. This was one of the most advanced weapons factory in Russia that Anfia's family had taken from the laboratory. However, it was useless. Dong! 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 The heavy footsteps seemed to be stepping on everyone's hearts. Everyone's heartbeat sped up and they found it difficult to breathe. Everyone was in despair. What should we do? The young master named Bruce was trembling. Tears were streaming down his face as he yelled hysterically, I'm sorry. I want to go home. I don't want to die. I really don't want to die. I still have a lot of money to spend. I still want to drink vodka. I still want to sleep with beauties. How is this possible? Isn't this a safe zone? Connolly was also panicking. He did not know what to do and could not believe it. At this moment, the two snow demons were only 10 meters away from them. However, no one tried to escape. They were just huddled together like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. They knew that they could not escape. The snow demons were as fast as flying horses. Even if they escaped, they would still die. Get out! All of a sudden, Sean's eyes turned vicious. He raised his leg and kicked Kane's lower back. After all, Sean had the blood of a werewolf. His strength was far greater than that of an ordinary person. Kane was kicked more than 10 meters away. Kane only saw a blur in front of his eyes. When he looked again, he saw that the two demons had already opened their bloody mouths. Who kicked me? Kane was trembling. He wanted to cry but had no tears. He panted crazily and said to Tank and Reynolds in a choked voice, I know I'm dead for sure, but I just want to know who the fuck kicked me. Guess. Tank licked the saliva at the corner of his mouth with his long tongue and asked jokingly. I guess it's Bruce. I slept with his girlfriend. I think he already knows. Kane hesitated for a moment and said, fuck. Bruce gritted his teeth and cursed. He did not expect to hear this news before he died. It was too tragic. No, it's Sean who kicked you. Tank grinned. His mouth split open to the roots of his ears. His teeth were as sharp as steel knives and sticky saliva hung from them. Ha, humans are really interesting. Reynolds laughed out loud. Yeah. So interesting. Tank agreed. Sean, you fucking piece of shit. Kane was so angry that his eyes almost popped out. He left his last words, which were eaten up by Tank in the blink of an eye. Clang, clang, clang. Reynolds took large strides and ran toward Connolly and the others. Everyone cried out miserably as they pushed each other forward, throwing away their helmets and armors. It was complete chaos. Calm down, calm down. This is a safe zone. He won't be able to get in. Connolly still had a glimmer of hope and tried to comfort everyone. But it turned out that he was too optimistic. Reynolds rushed over in the blink of an eye and directly grabbed a young master. He pulled one of his thighs and tore it apart. Blood splattered and dripped down. Steaming hot internal organs flowed out. The young master did not even have time to scream before he was torn into two pieces. This was a bloody scene. It was extremely horrifying and made one's scalp tingle. After tearing the young master apart, Reynolds immediately bit and ate heartily. He then rushed toward the others. It's useless. This place is not safe. Run. There was utterly no need for Connolly's reminder. The crowd that was terrified to the point their souls almost left their bodies shrieked and scattered in all directions like terrified stray dogs. However, they were too slow. Or rather, they were too slow compared to the two snow demons. Reynolds and Tank roared loudly. Their roars were like thunder and they were like galloping horses. They waved their claws full of bone hooks and chased after the group. Chee! 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 Heads flew up and blood splattered on the ice. In the blink of an eye, they were frozen and their internal organs flowed out. The exploration team members fell into a pool of blood one by one like harvested rice. Unlike the others who were running wildly, Anfia still retained some rationality. She ran in the direction that Jiang Tian had left. She could now conclude that Jiang Tian was definitely not an ordinary person. That place was not a safe zone, and Jiang Tian himself was the best protective talisman. Only by staying by Jiang Tian's side would they be safe. In this place, only Jiang Tian could save everyone's lives. Mr. Jiang. Save us. Anfia had already seen Jiang Tian's back from afar and cried out happily. However, Anfia was directly knocked to the ground by Sean, who was running wildly in a panic. Her ankle was sprained. After getting up, her speed decreased sharply and she was about to be caught. Roar! When Reynolds saw this, his eyes were ferocious and excited. He opened his bloody mouth and roared at the sky. He broke through the heavy snow and quickly chased after them. Help! Anfia cried out for help to Sean, Connolly, and the others who were running past her. However, Sean could not even take care of himself. How could he care about her? He was running for his life like a rabbit being chased by a ferocious tiger. In a matter of life and death, the cowardice and selfishness of human nature would be magnified infinitely. Otherwise, Shaoan wouldn't have kicked his good friend Kane out to be a meat shield. Chapter 743. He loved Anfia very much, but at this moment, under the threat of death, he couldn't care less. It could even be said that he had purposely knocked Anfia down. If Anfia was eaten, it would at least delay the monsters for a while, and his chances of survival would be higher. Connolly did not care about his employer anymore. His fire control was useless against these monsters, and he would only die if he went up. At this moment, his adrenaline was rapidly secreting, and he could not help but tremble as he ran without looking back. They quickly ran a kilometer away, and only Anthea was left behind. She was about to be caught by the two snow demons. It's over. Anthea is dead for sure. A guard looked back, and a trace of pity flashed in his eyes. Should we go and save her? Otherwise, how are we going to report back? A guard asked hesitantly. Save? How? Sean's face was as pale as paper as he cursed. If you want to save her, then go. Stop arguing, it's so annoying. This adventure is over. Connolly shook his head helplessly and sighed softly. Let's go quickly. When we reach a place where we can find satellite signals, we'll call for a helicopter to pick us up. A trace of coldness flashed in his eyes as he swept his gaze across the crowd. If his family asks, you have to remember that we did not leave him in the lurch. We did our best. All the dead sacrificed themselves to save Anthea. Anthea did not expect that these young masters, who usually flattered her in every way possible, and these loyal guards who called themselves heroes, would choose to stand by and do nothing at this critical moment. Roar! Renault's mouth cracked open, and his teeth were as sharp as icicles as he roared at Anthea. I don't want to die. Facing this unkillable monster, Anthea stumbled back and fell to the ground, crying helplessly. Evil creature, get lost. Just as Anthea was in despair, a soft shout rang out. Anthea turned around and saw Jiang Tian appear behind her like a ghost. Jiang Tian, who was dressed in plain clothes, stood proudly like a jade mountain, as if he could support the heavens and earth. You're not afraid of me? Reynolds stopped in his tracks and stared at Jiang Tian as he roared. What are you afraid of? Jiang Tian coldly snorted. You're not afraid of me. Reynolds pounded his chest and roared at the sky. His voice was like thunder, breaking the wind and snow. Do you know that I can't be killed? You should be afraid of me. He became more and more agitated, and his expression became more and more warped. His gaze was extremely ferocious, and it seemed as if it could annihilate the world. With a roar, the sky and earth changed color. Even the aurora became distorted as a large hole was torn open. Rumble. His roar was like a thunderstorm. The people in the distance only felt a sharp pain in their eardrums and a splitting headache. Their eyes rolled back and they fainted on the ground. Some shamans and oracles even had their spiritual power severely affected, and blood spurted out of their mouths and noses. A mountain several kilometers away was shattered, triggering a huge avalanche that swept up thousands of piles of snow. Although Anthea was very close, she was protected by Jiang Tian's astral winds, so there was no problem at all. Do you think you can't be killed? Do you think you're a true god, the god of Hongmeng? Ridiculous. A hint of disdain flashed in Jiang Tian's eyes. You, or should I say, you're actually just a spiritual power in the universe, or an extremely cold distorted force field. So, you can make the electromagnetic signals in this area disappear. You're between life and non-life. You're shapeless and can only live in the bodies of humans. You're hard to kill, but I can break everything. Besides, you can't even be called a Dharma law or Tao law. Boom. After Jiang Tian said that, Snow Fiend, who had taken over Reynolds's body, took a step back in fear as if it had seen an evil ghost. Who are you? I've been here for more than 1,000 years, but no one has ever seen through my background. Snow Fiend hissed. You don't deserve to know my name. Jiang Tian sneered. But I want to ask you, how did you come to Earth? This kind of dead planet with no spirit chi can't give birth to such a terrifying energy like yours. I remember a long, long time ago, I lived on ancient Earth. At that time, the world was full of spirit chi. Many of my people and I could fly, form rivers, move mountains and fill seas. Reynolds was in a daze. Then, he said with a face full of fear. But one day, it came. It's here, and everyone's dead. Gods, immortals, humans, everything died. No one was its match. It could kill gods and immortals. I was also killed by it. Jiang Tian listened quietly. He already had some understanding in his heart. These snow fiends were actually the divine soul fragments of a powerful cultivator on ancient Earth. Yes, Jiang Tian found that there wasn't just one snow fiend here, but at least a few dozen of them. But they were of the same origin and belonged to the same divine soul fragments. They could split and merge in an instant. Some were strong and some were weak. Because they could merge and split, they could also share the energy they obtained. Every time they devoured a human, their bodies and minds would become a little stronger. Otherwise, they would have disappeared long ago. What Reynolds said was the memory of the owner of these divine soul fragments. Jiang Tian could now infer that the owner of these divine soul fragments was extremely powerful and had even reached the level of tribulation transcendence. Otherwise, his divine soul fragments wouldn't have existed for so long and even had some vague memories. What else? Jiang Tian saw that he didn't say anything and asked. I died, but my divine soul saw that the spirit chi on earth was gradually drying up. Some cultivators flew away in aircraft. Reynolds looked gloomy and said in a hoarse voice. Some divine souls were annihilated, and some were taken away. But I didn't want to go. Where did they go? Why didn't you go with them? Jiang Tian asked. This is my home. My lover is also here. At this time, Reynolds's fingers nimbly made a few gestures. Suddenly, a dim spiritual energy floated out from his fingertips. He carefully held it with both hands, as if he was holding a delicate flower or a tender leaf. It was as precious as a diamond. He said affectionately, she can't withstand the strong wind of space travel. She will be completely annihilated on the way. Ice crystal-like tears flowed out of his eyes. He said in a trembling voice, so I'm here to accompany her. I've been with her for thousands of years, maybe even longer. My memory is also very vague. I've been using my spiritual energy to nourish her every day. I'm getting weaker and weaker. I have no choice but to devour the spiritual energy of humans. Seeing this, Jiang Tian sighed softly and said, she's already dead. This is just the ember of her divine soul. You can't even talk to her. But I feel that she can talk to me every day. Snow Demon smiled foolishly. Forget it. It's too painful for you to live. You've already fallen into the demonic path. Destroy yourself. Jiang Tian suddenly felt a little sorry for him and tried to persuade him. Perhaps it was the attachment and obsession brought by the ember of his lover's divine soul that allowed him to survive for so long. Otherwise, he would have been annihilated long ago. No. I don't want to die. Snow Demon Renault sacrificed this divine soul into his own body. He suddenly raised his head and laughed sinisterly. Your spiritual energy is very strong. If I devour your spiritual energy, I might be able to live for 10,000 years. You're no match for me. Jiang Tian raised his eyebrows and said in a low voice, do you know that the people you devour also have parents, lovers, attachments, and love? Then let's try it. Snow Demon Renault roared loudly. His murderous intent rose as if a demon god had descended. There was a loud rumble. Fragments of the Snow Demon's divine soul swept over from all directions. Even the one on Tank's body gathered in his body. His figure suddenly grew taller. Crack! Crack! He instantly turned into a 10-meter-tall young man with a rustic appearance and an abnormally tall body. He wore an animal skin coat, revealing his unusually strong muscles. He wore straw sandals on his feet and a feather crown on his head. A necklace made of dragon horns hung around his neck. He held a 10-meter-long bone club in his hand. This was the appearance of the ancestors of ancient Earth. He was filled with a primitive and wild aura. Although he was completely made of ice crystals and snowflakes, his surging blood was forcibly condensed from his appearance when he was alive. Perhaps he had once been a peer of Fushi Shinong. Perhaps he had seen Hou-Yi shoot down the sun. Perhaps he had seen Gonggang angrily attack Mount Buzhou. There were many unknowns and mysterious auras on him. Seeing this, Jiang Tian's heart suddenly skipped a beat. As expected. There might really have been a developed cultivation civilization on ancient Earth. It might have happened more than once. Boom! The snow demon tiger roared. It raised its cudgel and smashed down on Jiang Tian's head. Crack! Before the bone club arrived, the violent pressure had already arrived. Heaven and earth changed color and the wind and clouds surged. A huge crack 3 to 4 miles long appeared on the ground. In the distance, a glacier more than a few hundred meters tall was directly crushed into powder. Seeing this, Anthea exclaimed. She was of noble status and had experienced many things. She knew werewolves and shamans and was very knowledgeable. However, she had never seen such a terrifying expert. You are very powerful, but compared to my strength, you are still too far away. Jiang Tian's eyes were full of contempt as he waved his hand. A giant golden palm that was 7 to 8 meters long swept out with the force of toppling mountains and overturning seas. Clang! The giant golden palm hit Reynolds like a rubber ball. Whoosh! Snow Demon was like a giant rubber ball that flew dozens of meters away. The ice on the ground cracked and caved in, forming a deep pit. Boom! Cracks appeared on the Snow Demon's huge body. Even one of its arms was completely shattered. Dozens of kilometers away from where Jiang Tian was, in a cave on another island. The glacier where the cave was located was carved into the shape of a giant wolf's head. An ice wolf's head. If the overlords of the underground world were here, they would definitely be frightened. Because this was the lair of the moon-worshipping wolf tribe, where the wolf ancestor resided. Wolf Ancestor Mountain. The one-armed wolf king Alexander was bowing to an old man with a wild and ferocious aura who was sitting on a tall mystic ice chair. He said sincerely, Your Majesty Wolf Ancestor, please take me to the tomb of the treasured sword. Maybe I can be nourished and form a new arm. Alexander, you are not qualified. The old man was the wolf ancestor. He was skinny and had protruding ribs. His hair had fallen out, and he was very old. However, his eyes were as sharp as blades, ferocious and violent, and there was a kind of overbearing and destructive aura. Chapter 744. You betrayed the werewolves and cooperated with the despicable humans. Humans were once our enemies. No, now humans are our enemies too. The wolf ancestor roared angrily, they hunted us and stole our habitat. But you colluded with them. Get lost. You are expelled from the glorious werewolves. Alexander was forced to take a step back by the violent pressure. The blood in his chest churned and his face changed drastically. It had been decades, but the wolf ancestor's strength seemed to be even stronger than before. He could feel that he wouldn't even last 3 minutes in front of the wolf ancestor before dying a violent death. Behind the wolf ancestor stood a few middle-aged werewolves. These middle-aged werewolves were tall and strong with pure blood. They were strong and powerful and exuded a bloodthirsty aura. Their strength was on par with Alexander's, if not stronger. They were called wolf servants and were the direct descendants of the wolf ancestor. If they were born, they would shake the world and stir up a storm. Wolf ancestor, I cooperated with the Russian military to preserve your bloodline. Sometimes, we need to compromise. Alexander shook his head helplessly and explained. Let them extract our blood and use our excellent and powerful genes to modify those weak and lowly humans. The wolf ancestor stood up, his eyes filled with arrogance as he shouted angrily. This is not to preserve our bloodline, but to pollute our noble race and make us impure. Go away. I'm already being merciful by not killing you. Boom. As soon as he said that, a dozen wolf servants stepped forward and roared angrily at Alexander. Fine, then I'll go find the secret of the sword vault myself. Seeing this, the wolf king secretly gritted his teeth, turned around, and walked out of the cave. But all of a sudden, he stopped in his tracks. Without turning his head, he warned with a cold expression, "Wolf ancestor, for the continuation of the werewolf's bloodline, please don't become enemies with Kang Tae-chu." "Why? You are a member of the werewolves, why are you speaking for our enemy?" the wolf ancestor asked with a trace of anger. "Kang Tae-chu is too strong." A trace of bitterness appeared at the corner of Alexander's mouth. He shook his head and sighed, "I once wanted to become stronger and take revenge for my severed arm. But when I saw him sweep through the French army and saw the video of him killing a human immortal in Hua Xia, I thought that the wolf clan was no match for him. If you want to challenge him, only death awaits." "Ha! Alexander, you've been with humans for too long. You've lost the courage and pride of a wolf." The wolf ancestor laughed and said disdainfully, "Humans are as weak as ants, not worth mentioning. If it wasn't for the rapid development of their technology and their reliance on firearms, they would have been defeated long ago. This earth would have long been the world of the werewolves." The werewolf raised his chin high and said proudly, "You have to know that I was ranked on the power roll 100 years ago. I once competed with the ancestral patriarch of the Hong sect and Hao Taichung of Mount Shu. Kang Tae-chu is no match for me." A sharp glint flashed across his eyes as he said coldly, "After the sword vault opens, I must get all the treasures. The next step is to set foot in Sidoni and kill Kang Tae-chu. Sidoni believes in the gods, and I will replace him as the new god of Sidoni." Seeing this, a wry smile appeared on Alexander's face. He shook his head and said, "You are digging your own grave. How dare you talk to me like that?" Just as the wolf ancestor was about to lose his temper, a series of thunderous roars came into his ears. The wolf ancestor's face darkened as he heard the strange roars. "That is the snow demon. He has killed many werewolves. Let's go and have a look." Then, boom! He turned into a giant werewolf and rushed out of the cave. The other werewolves followed closely behind. On the other side of Jiang Tian. "Arg! You are no match for me. I am an immortal, and humans are just weak ants." The snow demon condensed an arm once more and roared out. Holding the large bone club, it swept up a snow dragon and charged forward. "I have already given you a chance. If you keep talking nonsense, I will kill you." Jiang Tian scolded. "You can't kill me. I am immortal. I am very powerful. You, submit to me." The snow demon roared angrily. He swept his club and rolled up thousands of piles of snow as if he could destroy the world. The snow demon knew how powerful Jiang Tian was, so he didn't hold back and used all his strength. The force of this strike was so great that it could smash a tank into a metal pancake and capsize a large warship. "Submit to you? You think too highly of yourself." Jiang Tian was filled with disdain as he threw out a punch. "You are just a divine soul fragment. Even at your peak, you are not worthy of carrying my shoes." Boom! There was an earth-shattering sound as a giant golden fist landed on the snow demon's chest like a meteor. Bam! The snow demon exploded. Within a radius of 5 to 6 kilometers, air currents and ice were sent flying. The snow demon's mental strength was attached to the snow and ice. Naturally, it exploded. At that moment, the snow demon's mental strength was torn to pieces. It was greatly depleted and was almost completely annihilated. I can't die. I won't die. I am an almighty. I am a supreme immortal." The snow demon's voice was like the howling of the wind, shaking the void. It sounded distant and close at times, echoing in all directions. It was ethereal, tragic, and terrifying. This time, the snow demon took half a minute to successfully form a body of ice and snow. However, it was obvious that he was very weak. His facial features were distorted and his body was swaying. It was obvious that his mental strength had been weakened by more than half. "One more blow and I will kill you." Jiang Tian sighed and shook his head. Spiritual power originally needed to be stored in the physical body in order to survive. Once it left the body, it would be like a tree without roots. Without nourishment, how could it survive? An ordinary person's 3 spiritual and 7 physical souls could only survive for a few breaths after the death of the body. Even if an expert cultivated a primordial spirit, he couldn't leave the body at will, let alone live for more than 1,000 years. It was a kind of obsession. No. I won't die. I will devour your divine soul and use it as nourishment. The snow demon roared at the sky and attacked Jiang Tian again. The icy fist broke through the air and hit Jiang Tian. In an instant, the temperature dropped to absolute 0. It wanted to freeze Jiang Tian's body to death. Swoosh! 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 At the same time, icicles and ice arrows formed in front of him. They looked like blue gemstones, but they were so sharp that they could easily penetrate alloys. They were aimed at Jiang Tian. Sigh. Jiang Tian sighed and used the gunmetal divine body for the first time. Suddenly, he emitted an infinite amount of golden light that illuminated the area within a 1-kilometer radius. At this time, his body seemed to be cast in gold. He was like a golden Buddha that had descended to the mortal world. He was like a peerless god of war who stepped on the eternal sky. Crack! Jiang Tian punched. The snow demon's fist was shattered into countless pieces. Then, its entire arm and half of its shoulder were shattered. Arg! Snow demon screamed miserably and staggered backwards. It couldn't feel physical pain, but the weakening and annihilation of its mental strength was very uncomfortable. The next moment, the golden lake in Jiang Tian's forehead rippled. Clang! The golden armor general leaped out and stabbed Snow Demon in the chest with his sharp saber. Smack! At this time, there was a soft sound. The ember of the divine soul of the Snow Demon's lover was shattered and turned into gray smoke. We are already dead. We can't be resurrected, the remaining divine soul said with the last of its strength. I haven't been happy all these years. Not at all. Don't be stubborn. Don't make me suffer. Arg! Don't die. Don't go. We have to be together forever. Snow Devil struggled to get up, wailing and howling. It dragged its broken leg and body as it limped and chased after it, waving its hands to grab the gray smoke. Its mental strength was severely weakened. The distortion force field couldn't hold on. Its torso and limbs kept condensing and shattering. But the gray smoke passed through its fingers and didn't stay. It eventually dissipated. There was only a vast expanse of whiteness between heaven and earth, and nothing was left. Dead. Yes, she's already dead. I'm dead too. I'm just an obsession. The snow demon stood there with its head lowered. It looked at its empty chest and muttered to itself in a hoarse voice. It's too painful. It's really too painful. For so many years, I couldn't hug her. I couldn't see her. I couldn't even feel my own existence. There's only endless emptiness and loneliness. There's only endless hatred and regret. The snow demon trembled violently. Its mental strength shook violently and was quickly destroyed. Its face became more and more blurry. Its facial features were distorted. Snowflakes and ice crystals fell from its body. Do you hate me? Jiang Tian recalled the golden armored general and shook his head with a sigh. If not for me, you might not have realized. No, I don't hate you. The snow demon slowly shook its head. I shouldn't have existed for so many years. It should have ended long ago. Now, it's time for me to go. The next moment, there was a loud bang. The snow demon's body exploded, turning into millions of snowflakes and ice crystals that drifted down. The snowflakes and ice crystals covered an area of several hundred meters. It was as if there was a snowstorm. That obsessive-like mental strength had been completely destroyed. Jiang. Kang Te Chu. When Wolf King Alexander rushed to a glacier, he just happened to see the snow demon self-destruct in front of Jiang Tian. He couldn't help but turn pale with fright. He staggered and almost fell to the ground. Chapter 745. One had to know that this snow demon was too powerful and terrifying. It had existed for hundreds of years. It had dominated the Northern Isles and killed many experts of the Winter Soldiers and ancestral Wolf Mountain. Even the wolf ancestor had to avoid it. It had fought with it for decades without a way to win. But now, it had self-destructed in front of Jiang Tian. Alessandra knew that Jiang Tian was very strong, but he didn't know that Jiang Tian was strong to such an extent. At this time, the wolf ancestor and the werewolves were still a few kilometers away from Jiang Tian, but how could they avoid Jiang Tian's divine sense? Jiang Tian also saw Alessandra, but he was too lazy to pay attention to it. He was just a defeated opponent. If he submitted obediently, that would be it. If he didn't, he would directly smash him into pieces with a single slap. He should be the legendary wolf ancestor. However, the old man behind Alessandra with a walking stick made Jiang Tian's heart skip a beat. This old man had the purest moon wolf bloodline and had at least 300 years of life. Such a long life, but his qi and blood were still very strong, far surpassing Zeus at his peak. His combat strength was comparable to the human immortal Situ Yuanhao. However, Jiang Tian didn't care. When Jiang Tian killed Situ Yuanhao, he was still at the 7th stage of qi refinement, but now he was at the 8th stage. If he wanted to kill the wolf ancestor, it would be like swatting a fly. At this time, Jiang Tian also noticed that Alessandra and the wolf ancestor were divided into two distinct groups, each leading a team. The dozen or so werewolves behind Alessandra seemed to be more modern. They were wearing down and synthetic fiber clothes, wristwatches, and backpacks with cooked food and daily necessities. They seemed to have completely integrated into the secular world. If it weren't for their unusually tall bodies, ordinary people would think that they were ordinary humans. Behind Alessandra, there were 7 or 8 middle-aged men in addition to some werewolves. They were humans, but they all had a solemn aura. They seemed to be either rich or noble, and had an extraordinary background. As for the werewolves behind the wolf ancestor, they were only wearing very primitive animal skins, revealing large parts of their skin, and holding stone clubs and strange knives. Moreover, it could be seen that the animal skins were mostly used to cover the private parts. Most of them were used to cover the crotch area, and not to protect the body from the cold. It seems that there are different groups within the wolf clan, just like the clean clothes faction and the dirty clothes faction of the beggar sect. When Jiang Tian saw this, he clicked his tongue and felt that it was very interesting. "Mr. Jiang, thank you for saving me." Anfia bowed deeply to Jiang Tian with a face full of gratitude. "If it weren't for you, I would have definitely died." At this moment, she was truly filled with gratitude and admiration for Jiang Tian. Deep in her heart, she was also somewhat ashamed. Along the way, she repeatedly doubted Jiang Tian's strength, believing that Jiang Tian was not worthy of being her companion. Compared to people like Xiao En, Anfia felt that Jiang Tian was too inferior. He was cowardly, weak, and incompetent. But reality proved that Xiao En and everyone else were like clowns compared to Jiang Tian. Only in times of danger would a person's nature be revealed. There was no doubt that whether it was courage, ability, or charisma, Xiao En could not even compare to Jiang Tian's finger. Recalling how she had repeatedly looked down on Jiang Tian along the way, Anfia's face was so red that it was about to bleed. Jiang Tian was definitely an expert. His strength far surpassed Connolly's, and could even be compared to the legendary Wolf King. It was just that he kept a low profile and did not want to show off. Such a man was too tempting. Anfia even felt that even the Russian emperor paled in comparison to Jiang Tian. The Russian emperor liked to show off his masculinity. He rode horses and hunted deer, becoming the idol of all Russian women. However, Anfia knew that every time the emperor went out hunting, there would be a large number of helicopters patrolling the sky to protect him. Jiang Tian was too lazy to say anything, so he turned and left. The reason why he had taken action was more because the snow demon would harm people, and not because of Anfia. Jiang Tian did not have a good impression of her. If she had not been careless and underestimated the enemy, so many people would not have died. Of course, those people who died were not good people. If they died, then they died. Jiang Tian did not care. Anfia could feel the obvious distance in Jiang Tian's attitude. However, she was unwilling to give up and hurriedly followed Jiang Tian. On the way, she kept crying out in pain, hoping that Jiang Tian would notice her. It would be even better if he could help her. But unfortunately, Jiang Tian didn't even look at her from start to finish. Anfia could not help but have a bitter expression. She sighed deeply, and a strong sense of regret welled up in her heart. She was full of regret. She knew that Jiang Tian did not treat her as a friend. She knew that she had missed out on Jiang Tian, this godlike man. At this time, Xiao En, Connolly, and the others had woken up. Seeing Jiang Tian and Anfia walking over one after another, Xiao En hurriedly went up to support Anfia. He asked with concern, "Anfia, are you okay? Where are those monsters?" Slap. Anfia swung her hand and gave him a slap. She shouted with disdain, "Xiao En, I've seen you clearly. You're a piece of trash." Xiao En staggered from the slap and almost fell to the ground. He looked at Jiang Tian with resentment and anger. If there was no comparison with Jiang Tian, he would not have appeared so cowardly, and Anfia would not have looked down on him. Connolly and the others were also ashamed. His action of abandoning his employer and running away was despicable. Those monsters were all killed by Mr. Jiang. "You don't have to run. Don't be afraid," Anfia said with a cold face. "Mr. Jiang is actually so powerful." Suddenly, everyone looked at Jiang Tian with new eyes. They could not believe it. Those two monsters were too powerful. Even laser guns could not kill them. Even Connolly could not do anything to them. However, Jiang Tian had killed them. Then they looked at each other with hesitation. They did not know the habits of the snow fiends. They did not know that Jiang Tian had already killed all the snow fiends. Now they were worried that the snow fiends would appear again. They were hesitant about whether they should build a good relationship with Jiang Tian and let Jiang Tian protect them. However, when they thought about how they looked down on Jiang Tian, they felt a little embarrassed. In the end, the fear of death overwhelmed their pride. Xiaoan said with a fawning face, "Mr. Jiang, I really underestimated you. So you're the best." The next moment, he strode over, puffed out his chest, and said proudly, "Let's make a deal. If you're willing to protect me along the way, I'm willing to give you $100,000. $100,000 was equivalent to 600,000 to 700,000 renminbi. In 2011, it was still very tempting. "Get lost," Jiang Tian said. "What did you say?" Xiaoan could not believe it and his face was filled with anger. As the descendant of Alexander, his family was one of the top 10 oligarchs in Russia. Even the mayor of Moscow had to be courteous to him. He had never been scolded so disrespectfully. "I said, get lost." Jiang Tian directly swung out a palm, slapping Xiaoan's face. Xiaoan was sent flying 8 meters away. His cheeks were broken and his cheekbones were cracked. Half of his teeth fell out. He lay on the ground and groaned for a long time before he got up. "Mr. Jiang, how dare you hit Xiaoan? Do you know who he is?" One of Xiaoan's companions helped him up, then roared loudly at Jiang Tian. His name was Michael, and he was also the son of an oligarch. His family was in the natural gas industry and was listed on the Forbes list of the world's richest people. "Do you know who I am? How dare you talk to me like that?" Jiang Tian said sarcastically. "Even if I kill him, what can I do? What can you do if I kill all of you? You. Michael couldn't believe it. He was so angry that he laughed. Kill us? How arrogant of you. If I tell you who he is, you'll be scared to death. Do you think he's just rich? He's the descendant of Wolf King Alexander. Wolf King. If he comes, he'll have to kneel before me. Jiang Tian smiled disdainfully. You. How dare you insult my noble and powerful ancestor? Xiao En pointed angrily at Jiang Tian, his hands trembling in anger. Michael also sneered, his heart full of mockery. What a reckless fool. Xiao En might not be able to kill you now, but once he leaves the island and reaches the heart of Russia, he can summon a large number of werewolves to kill you. Connolly also shook his head. Jiang Tian had offended Xiao En too thoroughly this time. It was not a wise decision. Right at this moment, rumble, rumble, a snow dragon swept up in the distance as a dozen or so experts rushed over. When Anphia saw the man in the lead, she was dumbfounded and scared out of her wits. This is big trouble. Someone is going to die. The newcomers were Alexander and the Wolf King's clan. When Anphia saw her father behind the Wolf King, she hurriedly ran over and said, "Dad, help me plead. This Huaxia youth saved me before. Anphia, why did you come to this place? It's too dangerous." Anphia's father, Berezov, was a financial oligarch. From his point of view, he naturally didn't want to offend Alexander because of Jiang Tian. After all, he was the backing of many oligarchs. He looked indifferently at Jiang Tian and shook his head. Anphia, he beat up Alexander's descendant. If Alexander doesn't kill him, I'll give him some compensation. Dad. If you don't speak now, he'll be killed by Alexander. Anphia pleaded with a sobbing tone. Berezov shook his head, not moved in the slightest. When Xiao En saw Alexander, he immediately ran over and pointed at Jiang Tian. Your Excellency Wolf King, he wanted to kill me and even insulted you. Hurry up and tear him to shreds. As he spoke, he looked at Jiang Tian in a threatening manner, as if Jiang Tian was already a dead man. Caucasian Shaman Connolly greets Your Excellency Wolf King. Connolly also bowed deeply to Alexander to express his utmost respect. Apart from the reclusive wolf ancestor and a few other old monsters, Alexander could be considered the #1 expert in Russia. Although Connolly was a shaman, compared to Alexander, he was still too far behind. Kid, are you regretting it now? You actually dared to disrespect the Wolf King. You're dead. After bowing to Alexander, Mai Ken and the other young masters looked at Jiang Tian proudly. Since the Wolf King was here, they had nothing to fear, not even the threat of those monsters. And the arrival of the Wolf King was tantamount to announcing the death of this arrogant Huaxia kid. Chapter 746. Connolly also fanned the flames. Your Excellency Wolf King, this person is a Huaxia Dharma cultivator. He might have a spatial artifact. Before you kill him, you must force him to hand over that artifact. Everyone thought that the Wolf King was going to kill Jiang Tian. Unexpectedly, the Wolf King's face stiffened. Bastard! How dare you disrespect Master Kong? In the next moment, his face was filled with anger. Without saying a word, he directly slapped Xiao En on the head. Smack! Sean's head was bleeding. He flew more than 10 meters away and rolled on the ground. He was half dead and barely breathing. Then, under Anphia's shocked gaze, Alessandra quickly walked up to Jiang Tian and bent his knees. Put on. He knelt down, lowered his arrogant head, and said with a trembling voice, My Excellency Wolf King, Little Liger. Little Wolf Alexander greets Your Excellency Jiang Ligua. I wish Grandmaster Jiang Ligua to improve every day and live a long life. As soon as he said that, there was dead silence. Anphia, Connolly, Mai Ken, Berezov, and the others were dumbfounded. They couldn't believe their eyes as they stared at the young man in plain clothes, whose sleeves were fluttering in the wind and whose aura was otherworldly. The Wolf King's status in Russia was too high. Just like Yi Zhantian in Huaxia, he could talk to the Russian emperor directly and talk to the Northern Army commander as equals. In the eyes of Anfia, Michael, and the others, he was like a high and mighty god, awe-inspiring and inviolable. But now, this famous Wolf King actually called himself Little Wolf and knelt down respectfully in front of Jiang Tian. This was too unbelievable. It was like a legend. In an instant, everyone couldn't come back to their senses. Their faces were full of shock and confusion. They wondered what kind of background this Huaxia young man had to be able to make the Wolf King kneel down and submit to him. It's him. Suddenly, Berezov's expression changed rapidly. He suddenly exclaimed. Dad, who is he? Anfia and the others were still confused. The werewolves and oligarchs such as Berezov had already stepped forward and bowed deeply. They said in an unprecedentedly respectful tone, "Greetings, National Hunter Master Kong." Xiao En suddenly realized something, and his face turned as white as a sheet of paper. He was scared out of his wits, and he knelt down and begged for mercy. Connolly's body trembled, and he shook his head with a wry smile. A trace of despair flashed in his eyes. I should have known. Among all the Chinese in the world, he's definitely the only one with such a powerful cultivation at such a young age. Seeing that the Wolf King's arm had yet to heal, Jiang Tian could not help but shake his head. It seemed that he still wanted her to help him fix his arm. That's right, Wolf King Alexander was indeed thinking this way. He knew that Jiang Tian's magic power was deep and unfathomable. To be able to restore Zhang Qianlei's youth, he must have a secret method to repair an arm. Since the wolf ancestor wasn't going to help him, he might as well rely on Jiang Tian. However, Jiang Tian would not accept him for nothing. He had to pay some price to show his loyalty. He raised his hand and pointed at Xiaoen. Is this your son? Along the way, he was disrespectful to me time and time again, trying to harm me. How dare you offend Master Kong? You really don't know what's good for you. Alexander stood up, and without saying a word, he grabbed Xiaoen's head with his large hand. Amidst Xiaoen's shrill screams, he suddenly twisted and directly twisted his head off. Alexander had spread his family in Russia and had many children. Xiaoen should be considered his sixth generation of children, and he had at least hundreds of such children. Killing one was not a pity at all. Moreover, the wolf clan was extremely vicious and cruel to begin with. They could not be judged by common sense. Once there was a child that he was dissatisfied with, the Wolf King had always killed him without mercy. Originally, he was extremely respectful of Jiang Tian, and he had a favor to ask of Jiang Tian. But now, Xiaoen had offended Jiang Tian. This infuriated the Wolf King to the extreme, but also to the extreme of fear. With Jiang Tian's current strength, he might be able to defeat Master Kong, who was known as the Hunter of Nations, and hunt down France. Even the sect leader of Huaxia's ancient Wudang sect, Chen Anping, and the leader of the Chinese Hong sect, Situ Yuanhao, were killed by him. Now, Jiang Tian could defeat a mortal deity with 1 foot, and he was known as Earth Immortal Jiang. How could the Wolf King be a match for him? 10 Wolf Kings were not enough to fill the gaps between Jiang Tian's teeth. It could be said that if Jiang Tian wanted to, he could kill all the moon-worshipping wolves in a few breaths. For the Wolf King, as long as he could appease Jiang Tian's thunderous anger, what harm was there in killing 1 or 2 of his children? Xiaoen's bloody head rolled to the ground. My Ken and the others were dumbfounded. They were so scared that they wet their pants. Their legs trembled as if they had seen a demon. This was too terrifying. Xiaoen was the Wolf King's son, and his blood flowed in his veins. But now, the Wolf King had killed him just because of Jiang Tian's words. This showed how much the Wolf King respected Jiang Tian. At this moment, they were filled with regret. The lamb that they thought they could bully at will turned out to be a peerless powerhouse who could suppress the Wolf King. How could they be so blind as to offend such a terrifying existence? In fact, they should have known how powerful Jiang Tian was from the fact that Jiang Tian did not die after jumping off the plane. However, their prejudice against the Chinese made them look down on and offend Jiang Tian again and again. In their eyes, the Chinese were weak, and easily bullied. They were as vulnerable as sheep. They had been enemies with Jiang Tian all this time, and finally, they were faced with death. Look, I told you that the Wolf King can't do anything to me even if I kill you. Do you believe me now? Jiang Tian chuckled, glanced at everyone, and said leisurely, I told you that I can kill all of you without a problem. Do you believe me now? We believe you. Master Kong, we believe you. Master Kong, please forgive me. I'm willing to be your servant. Connolly, my Ken, and the rest were trembling with fear. They kowtowed to Jiang Tian like they were pounding garlic. They were so scared that their souls were about to leave their bodies. Their heads knocked heavily on the ice and rocks, causing them to bleed profusely. Blood flowed down from their heads. Believe me, and I'll kill you all the same. Jiang Tian's expression was cold. He snorted and kicked my Ken to death. Your Excellency. This. My Ken's father, who was also an oligarch under the Wolf King's protection, cried out in shock and anger. If you dare say another word, I'll kill you too. The Wolf King's cold eyes stared at my Ken's father as he scolded coldly. Yes. My Ken's father was originally gnashing his teeth, but he was shocked when he saw the Wolf King's determination. In the end, the hatred in his heart turned into a deep sigh. Connolly was shocked when he saw my Ken was killed. He turned around and ran, his body turning into a flame. The person who can escape from my hands hasn't been born yet. Die. The corners of Jiang Tian's mouth curled up into a mocking smile. However, he did not attack and only shouted. The next moment, Connolly's body was shattered and his divine soul was annihilated. He turned into a pile of ashes and fell to the ground. On the surface, Connolly was the leader of the Anphia family's guard regiment, but his real identity was not ordinary. He was one of the 5 shamans of an ancient sect in the Caucasus. He was able to control fire, and even transcendent grandmasters had to be careful when he used the hellfire. But at this time, in front of Jiang Tian, he didn't even last a second and died a violent death, his body and soul destroyed. When everyone saw this, they felt their hair stand on end and were filled with fear. Even the Wolf King was shaken and emotionally moved. Master Kang's power seemed to have improved a lot. He was so powerful that he couldn't even fathom how powerful he was. Even if he wanted to kill Connolly, it would take at least 15 minutes. However, he had never thought that Jiang Tian would be able to kill him with the incantation of truth. Jiang Tian didn't want to kill the rest of the people. They were just a bunch of ants. After that, the Wolf King would naturally make them wish they were dead. Even their families would suffer. He is the world-famous Kang Tae-chu. Berezov finally revealed Jiang Tian's name to his daughter. He is the one who suppressed France and defeated a mortal deity. What? He is Kang Tae-chu. Anphia's face paled. As the daughter of an oligarch and a former member of the KGB, she had heard of Jiang Tian. After the other young masters and the guards talked for a while, their faces were filled with fear. They were scared out of their wits. Ever since Jiang Tian started to develop overseas, he was like the sun in the sky in the world, especially in the upper-class society. His name shook the world. During the battle with Sidoni, he had defeated the Pantheon of Gods, Winter Soldier, and Blue Storm, the 3 top organizations in the world. During the Gulf of Tonkin incident, he had forced President Sanchi to step down and the President of the European Union to bow his head. Anphia was extremely regretful at this moment. She had missed the opportunity. If she had treated Jiang Tian courteously and valued him, she could have at least become Jiang Tian's friend. If she had become Jiang Tian's friend, her family would have been invincible in Russia. Even the Wolf King would have to give her face. However, she had missed the opportunity. Master Kong, are you here for the opening of the sword catacomb? Wolf King Alexander asked. That's right. Jiang Tian nodded and asked with a frown, you know about the sword catacomb too? Master Kong, the reason why the Winter Soldier chose to be stationed in the Severnaya Zemlya was to make it easier to explore the secrets of the sword catacomb. The Wolf King said respectfully. For a long time, the gene fusion between werewolves and ordinary humans could not be successfully edited. There was a rejection reaction. When the sword catacomb opened last time, we obtained a divine herb inside. After the genetic warrior consumed it, the fusion was successful. It can be said that without the sword catacomb, there would be no Winter Soldier. In addition, the Wolf clan obtained some ancient books and magic weapons from it, which made us very powerful. My method of controlling moonlight was actually obtained from the sword catacomb. At this point, his face was full of longing. But before this, we had only explored the periphery of the sword catacomb and did not enter the core area. With Master Kang's power, he should be able to enter the core area and gain a lot. Let's go. Jiang Tian was straightforward. His figure was like a dragon as he flew into the distance. The Wolf King led the pack of wolves and quickly followed. People like Berezov and Anfia could only follow from a distance. Their speed was too slow. While flying, the Wolf King suddenly said in a low voice, Master Kong, you have to be careful. This time, the wolf ancestor is also going. That old man just now. Jiang Tian said with a disdainful smile. Chapter 747. Yes. He saw Master Kong just now, but he didn't greet him. He turned around and went toward the sword tomb. Obviously, he wants to monopolize the sword tomb. The Wolf King smiled bitterly. In this world, only Master Kong dared to call the wolf ancestor an old man. Ha, he wants to monopolize the sword tomb. He thinks too highly of himself. Jiang Tian laughed and sped up. If he dares to provoke me, I'll slap him to death. It turned out that Jiang Tian deliberately slowed down in order to observe the snow demon. Now that the snow demon had been destroyed, Jiang Tian's speed soared. In just 2 to 3 hours, he arrived before a mountain range. Jiang Tian was afraid that the Wolf King and the others would fall behind. Otherwise, he would be even faster. 9 glacial peaks rose from the ground. They were dozens of meters high and extremely steep, like sharp swords inserted into the ground. These 9 peaks were also connected by glaciers, forming a valley with a radius of half a kilometer. In the valley, white fog and snowflakes swirled in the air. There were powerful fluctuations of magic power, and there were flashing lights, swallowing and spitting out auspicious colors. It contrasted well with the aurora in the sky, looking very attractive. At the entrance of the valley, there was a stone tablet. On it, there were 2 large words written in iron and silver, Sword Tomb. This is a real sharp sword. A sword that is dozens or even hundreds of meters long, and it's a quasi-spiritual weapon. The immortal of 9 swords is really extraordinary. Jiang Tian looked at the 9 peaks and projected his divine sense. He couldn't help but feel shocked and slightly moved. But he didn't expect that when Jiang Tian arrived, Anfia, Berezov, and the others had already arrived. It turned out that after the snow demon died, the strange electromagnetic interference immediately disappeared. Satellite phones, walkie-talkies, and other communication devices could be used. In order to explore the secrets of the sword tomb, Berezov and these oligarchs built a modern base on a nearby island with helicopters, snowmobiles, and so on. Now that the communication was smooth, they immediately called a helicopter and arrived first. In fact, they were not the only ones who had arrived. Dozens of Russian grand shamans, and physical awakeners had also arrived. These grand shamans, sorcerers, and physique awakened ones were all extremely powerful. They were as powerful as transcendent grandmasters or Dharma spellmasters. Among them, some of the most outstanding ones could even be said to be half a step into the divine realm or even the divine realm. When Jiang Tian and the Wolf King arrived, these Russian powerhouses only nodded slightly, not showing much respect. The Wolf King's strength was actually at the deity realm. Many of these experts' cultivation levels were not far from his. In fact, some hidden experts might even be stronger than him. After all, the Wolf King Alexander was only the strongest person in Russia. There were those who were more powerful than him in seclusion. However, Berezov immediately led Anfia and the others to break through the wind and snow and greeted them with a look of despair. Master Kong, Your Excellency Wolf King, the wolf ancestor and his subordinates won't let us in. Don't let anyone else in. Jiang Tian scanned the valley with his immortal will and saw a few hundred werewolves scattered around the valley. Every single one of them held sharp blades and magic tools in their hands, and they stood ramrod straight like sentinels. They were completely silent and solemn, and their gazes were fierce as they swept the surroundings, seeming as if they would directly annihilate the slightest disagreement. The wolf ancestor sat cross-legged at the entrance of the valley with a mighty mace next to him. His eyes were closed and he was motionless. His body was covered in thick snow and he looked like an ice sculpture. There was a line in front of him and a line of words was written in Chinese, English, and Russian. A line of domineering words: anyone who crosses this line will die. It was strange. The snow was falling and the wind was howling. However, the heavy snow couldn't cover the words and the wind couldn't blow them away. It seemed that the words contained a certain amount of Dharma power, which made the wind and snow go away. Because of this, the grand shamans, sorcerers, and physique-awakened ones didn't dare to take a step forward. The wolf ancestor doesn't only have a strong bloodline and body, but he also has a lot of Dharma power. Seeing this, the Wolf King's face showed a hint of fear and envy. He approached Jiang Tian and reported. Jiang Tian looked at him with disdain. What Dharma power? In terms of Dharma power, even if the nine-sword deity was still alive, he wouldn't be a match for Kang Taechu. Even if the nine-sword deity was really from the ruins of immortality, the ruins of immortality was still an extremely remote place in the entire realm of cultivation. How could the people from the ruins of immortality be more powerful than Jiang Tian, who had been cultivating for 10,000 years? Wolf King, the wolf ancestor is the ancestor. So, you should be his son, right? However, Jiang Tian didn't want to talk about this, so he asked. Master Kong, there are many branches of the werewolves. I belong to the moon-worshipping werewolves and he belongs to the icefield werewolves. There are also the grassland werewolves and the bloodthirsty werewolves. I don't belong to the same clan as him, so I'm not his son. The Wolf King said respectfully. As for the name of the wolf ancestor, it's actually based on strength. Every 60 years, the werewolves of the world will hold a duel and the most powerful one will be called the wolf ancestor. The wolf ancestor is the most powerful werewolf in the last duel. However, he hates humans and wants the werewolves to rule the world. He calls himself a loner, but the other werewolves don't recognize him. Jiang Tian's face showed a hint of contempt. He sneered and said, "Haha, arrogant fool. Even among the thousands of races in the universe, humans were still the most powerful cultivation race, let alone these werewolves." Seeing this, the Wolf King said seriously. But Master Kong, this kid is indeed very powerful. I heard that he had entered Huaxia in the late Qing dynasty and his strength was enough to crush Chen Anping and the others. He also experienced the Napoleonic Wars. Some even said that he was the key to the Russian Tsar's victory over the stronger Napoleon. He has lived for 300 years. Jiang Tian scanned with his immortal will and wasn't surprised. Everyone was shocked when they heard that. The wolf ancestor was 300 years old. That was too scary. He was not human at all. He was a living fossil. That's right. The Wolf King's face was gloomy. He frowned and said. The wolf ancestor and the dire wolves are the native werewolves of Russia. They have been inextricably linked to the Russian Tsar since ancient times. 200 years ago, Napoleon swept across Europe and went on an expedition to Russia. The Russian Tsar at that time was muddle-headed and useless. Napoleon swept his way through and successfully took over Moscow. But after Napoleon took over Moscow, he took the initiative to retreat. On the way back, he suffered from extremely cold weather and was defeated in the end. As far as I know, the key to Russia's victory was the help of the dire wolves. Why is this related to the wolf ancestor? Anthea asked curiously. According to the historical records, it was because of a fire in Moscow, which was occupied by France. The French's provisions, cannons, and firearms were all destroyed in the fire. They had no choice but to retreat from Moscow. And when the French retreated, they suffered from extreme cold. The weather was not on their side, so they lost. Don't you think it's strange? The Wolf King smiled. Napoleon's army had already taken over Moscow and set up a temporary government and police. But a super fire broke out in Moscow, and the fire was all in important military areas. And it was only October at that time, but the cold wave came a few months in advance and turned Russia into a world of ice and snow. The Wolf King said solemnly. In fact, the Russian military intelligence had already deciphered it. This was all done by the wolf ancestor and his disciples. They were the ones who set the French's military camp on fire. The wolf ancestor also summoned wind and snow to bring extreme weather, freezing tens of thousands of French soldiers to death. In the Maloyaroslavets region, just a few dozen dire wolves slaughtered 100,000 French soldiers. The wolf ancestor alone killed more than 30,000 people. What? One person slaughtered 30,000 soldiers. Everyone was shocked and could not believe it. They looked at the wolf ancestor with shock and fear. They did not expect this skinny and ordinary-looking old man to have such a valiant battle record. At that time, there were already cannons and guns. Although they were not as powerful as the modern army, it was still very scary to be able to kill 30,000 people alone. Besides, that was 200 years ago. The wolf ancestor had been cultivating for so long. How powerful must he be? Master Kong, Your Excellency Wolf King, why don't we just call it a day? At this moment, everyone had the intention of retreating out of fear of difficulties. With the wolf ancestor here, it was truly a case of one man holding back 10,000 men. Anyone who wanted to enter the sword tomb was courting death. Master Kong was very powerful, but he was still not as powerful as this old monster who had lived for hundreds of years. The wolf ancestor was an immortal state warrior 100 years ago. He had been on the power rankings several times 100 years ago and was on par with Zeus of the older generation. The Wolf King sighed enviously. It was said that although he lost to Hao Taichung, the top swordsman of the late Qing dynasty, he was able to escape unscathed. In Russia, when the Tsar was still alive, the wolf ancestor was on equal footing with the Tsar. Even the commander-in-chief of the military had to be courteous to him. He was much more powerful than I am now. What he said was true. Martial artists, cultivators, superpower users and other super overlords were related to modern technology, especially military technology. 200 years ago, technology was not so developed. Overlords like the wolf ancestor who could fight against 10,000 people alone were like weapons of mass destruction and strategic weapons. They were highly valued by the governments of the major countries, just like humanoid nuclear bombs. But with the rise of technology, the secular governments had a new reliance and didn't want these super overlords to be in power. The status of super overlords was severely weakened. Even the United States and other major countries used to hunt down immortal state warriors all over the world. The moon-worshipping Wolf King and his people, as well as the kindred, were once chased by the modern army like stray dogs. Super overlords like the Palace of Gods and the Winter Army didn't dare to challenge the modern army no matter how powerful they were. Instead, they struggled under the support and control of the modern army and became their vassals and murderous tools. However, after the October Revolution, the Russian regime collapsed. Many of the wolf ancestor and his people were killed. He didn't want to be loyal to the new regime, so he went to the northern islands and hid in the Wolf Ancestor Mountain. The Wolf King's deep eyes flashed with a hint of vicissitudes. He sighed with a gloomy face. Okay. Jiang Tian nodded. The next moment, he walked lazily toward the entrance of the sword vault and said calmly, "A good dog doesn't block the way. Get out of my way." Chapter 748. The moment these words were spoken, the entire place was dead silent. Everyone was shocked. Many Russian overlords and magnates looked at Jiang Tian in disbelief. He's dead meat. How dare he disrespect the Wolf Ancestor? Doesn't he know who the Wolf Ancestor is? A Russian Grand Shaman exclaimed in disbelief. This Hua Xia boy must be crazy. A Russian half-step immortal state warrior sneered. Where did he come from? Hua Xia. Since when did Hua Xia have the right to set foot in the sword tomb? Everyone discussed. Yeah, the Wolf Ancestor was an immortal state warrior 100 years ago. He must be a mortal deity now. An overlord who had awakened his physique and was comparable to a transcendent grandmaster looked at Jiang Tian gloatingly, as if Jiang Tian was about to die. Yeah, when the Wolf Ancestor helped the Tsar defeat the Grand Master of the Qing dynasty, this young man was still in his liquid state. Someone grunted. Even Berezov and the others were a bit dumbfounded. Crazy. Too crazy. The Master Kong of Hua Xia was too arrogant. They thought it was reasonable for Jiang Tian to torture Xiao En and Connolly. After all, Jiang Tian's identity and strength were there. He could defeat the French army and the Wolf Ancestor, so he was certainly qualified to kill Xiao En and the others. However, the Wolf Ancestor was much more powerful than the Wolf Ancestor. He was the most powerful wolf in the world. After all, the Wolf Ancestor was the most powerful wolf in the world. The Wolf Ancestor was a reclusive old monster. He had killed tens of thousands of people and was a veteran expert with a lifespan of 300 years. Even if Jiang Tian caught up with him, he would only be on par with the Wolf Ancestor. The most rational thing for Jiang Tian to do was to negotiate with him and work with him. However, they had never thought that Jiang Tian would be so arrogant. Wasn't he stirring up trouble? At this moment, even Anfia was so anxious that she stomped her feet. She was a bit disappointed in Jiang Tian. Jiang Tian's charm had suddenly disappeared. Logically speaking, Jiang Tian was in charge of a country and a religion, so he should understand the essence of cooperation and compromise. How could he be as stupid as a brat and directly make an enemy out of the Wolf Ancestor? Among the crowd, only Maichin's father was overjoyed. I was helpless when you killed my son. But this time, you have offended the Wolf Ancestor. He will be furious. You can only die. How dare you? How dare you disrespect the Wolf Ancestor? Kneel down and beg for forgiveness. Wolf Ancestor, the ancestor of all wolves, the strongest of the 10,000 races. His bloodline is noble and his strength is formidable. How dare you act so impudently? You're courting death. As expected, many of the Icefield Wolf tribe members were enraged as they howled and roared at Jiang Tian. Each of them was as powerful as a transcendent grandmaster. Among them, a dozen wolf servants were as powerful as immortal state warriors. Hundreds of wolf servants roared at the same time, creating a sonic boom that sounded like rolling thunder. Boom! Boom! The sonic boom was so powerful that it blasted the ground like a cannonball. It stirred up snow and created a huge crater. Immediately, many of the experts around the sword tomb were shaken by the aftershock of the sound wave. The blood in their chests surged, and they almost fell to the ground. Sigh, we shouldn't have come this time. There are so many powerful overlords here. If we go, we will only be cannon fodder. The sonic boom was too much for them to bear. If it hit them directly, they would be smashed into pieces. As for Berezov and the other secular oligarchs and magnates, they were all lying on the ground like lowly insects. After all, the wolf attendants were experts at the god-rank realm. Any one of them could command the winter army and become an important weapon of the country. They were on par with Alexander the Wolf King. However, the Icefield Wolf tribe had a cold relationship with the current Russian regime. Therefore, they didn't want to come out. You are indeed Jiang Ligua, earth deity Jiang. You are indeed arrogant. The wolf ancestor suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes suddenly emitted a green light that was more than 3 meters long. His haggard face was calm as he spoke. This old man knows how powerful you are. You once swept through the French army and crushed many powerful organizations. Your battle achievements are glorious. You are known as Earth Deity Jiang. He was actually speaking fluent Chinese. This was not surprising. Overlords like him had traveled around the world in search of opportunities and resources. They were proficient in all kinds of languages. You are the most talented and the most powerful young man I have ever seen in the past 200 to 300 years. The wolf ancestors' 2 eyes were like 2 green divine lamps that illuminated the ancient times, causing people's hearts to palpitate. He said calmly, "If you continue to remain calm and cultivate bitterly for 100 years, even this old man will have to avoid you when I see you. I won't dare to fight you head-on." At this point, he was still admiring and praising. But the next moment, the old man's face became serious and his voice became cold. He said disdainfully, "But you are too arrogant. You don't know how to hide your strength and bide your time. You are too arrogant and have made too many enemies." It turns out that he is Kang Tae-chu. Yes, it's that Jiang Tai-chu who suppressed the winter soldiers and beat up the Russian world of powerhouses so badly that it was hard to breathe. Alexander the Wolf King is so shameless. He is Kang Tae-chu's accomplice. Damn it. At this time, many Russian overlords knew the origin of Jiang Tian, but they were all angry and stood against Jiang Tian. It should be noted that too many werewolves, shamans, and shamans died at the hands of Jiang Tian in the Battle of Sodom. In that battle, almost half of the Russian overlords died, which was a great loss to the Russian overlords. And the overlords who died in that battle were related to many of the people present, or were friends or relatives. Of course, they hated Jiang Tian very much. Hee, if we help the wolf ancestor kill Jiang Tai-chu now, I think the old man will let us go and let us enter the sword tomb. There were even more wise people who thought of a deeper level. Sensing everyone's hostility, Jiang Tian snorted coldly. Bide my time. What qualifications do you ants have for me to bide my time? Too many enemies. So what if the whole world is my enemy? I have said it before. If the Dark Parliament, the Holy See, the Wolf Clan, the Blood Clan, or the descendants of gods want to provoke me, I will kill them all. Jiang Tian glanced at the crowd and finally his eyes fell on Wolf Ancestor. He said disdainfully. To tell you the truth, I'm not targeting anyone. It's just that everyone here is trash in my eyes. Ha! Trash. We are trash. I am trash. Wolf Ancestor's green eyes were filled with viciousness and viciousness. He was so angry that he laughed and said arrogantly. Jiang Tai-chu, what right do you think you have to spout nonsense in front of me and offend me? I am the ancestor of the Wolf Clan. 200 years ago, I killed 30,000 French soldiers of Napoleon. Even the Russian Tsar had to bow to me when he saw me. I once had a drink with the founder of the Hong sect, Sita Shao. I had a sword duel with the most powerful swordsman of the Qing dynasty, Hao Taichung. Even the royal family of your country was afraid of me. You, a mere arrogant brat, a junior, what qualifications do you have to compete with me? What qualifications do you have to speak rudely and call me a dog and trash? The more he talked, the angrier he became. His voice became louder and louder until the last sentence was uttered. The moment his voice fell, a sound wave immediately condensed wind, snow, and ice crystals. Like a sharp longsword, it pierced out toward Jiang Tiandong. This ice crystal sword was 20 meters long, sharp and cold. It could easily kill an immortal state warrior. It was as powerful as the snow demon's ice arrow and was far more powerful than the ice spells of the snow witch Plehanova. A helicopter that was blocking between him and Jiang Tian was directly blasted into pieces, turning into scrap metal and flying away. The ice crystal sword pierced through a few hundred meters and went straight for Jiang Tian. Wherever it passed, the air was torn apart and the air trembled. The violent Dharma power crushed the glacier. This scene was simply too shocking. This was even more powerful than the mantra of truth. He had reached the level of a mortal deity. Break! Jiang Tian waved his hand. Kaboom! With a bang, the 20-meter-long profound ice sword shattered. The wolf ancestor grunted and his skinny body shook slightly. A hint of fear appeared on his face. He felt that Jiang Tian's mana was very deep, so deep that it was unfathomable. He immediately became vigilant in his heart. You're only a saint, equivalent to the mortal deity of Huaxia. You're on par with Zeus. Jiang Tian looked at him with disdain and said, I've told you, you're no match for me. You're too weak. Hee, Master Kong, if he can't beat you, I'll help you. Suddenly, a strange laugh came from afar. Suddenly, billions of snowflakes floated in the air within a few kilometers and even the wind stopped. That was an extremely shocking sight. Billions of snowflakes floated in the air like special effects in a movie, which defied the laws of physics. How powerful was his Dharma power and soul energy to be able to control such an astonishing amount of snowflakes? Everyone was frightened and turned their heads to look. They saw an old man wearing a sheepskin coat and holding a wilted plum cane. He kept coughing as he walked over step by step. After he walked over, countless snowflakes seemed to come alive and fell to the ground. The crutch in his hand had withered and cracked. However, the plum blossoms on it bloomed in the cold. They were as red as blood and had a sinister and cold aura. Who is he? What a powerful cultivation. He can control billions of snowflakes without saying a word. I'm afraid he's a mortal deity or a saint. When the experts around the sword tomb saw this old man, they felt a sense of trepidation and uneasiness. Where the plum blossoms pass, nothing grows. Ferocious ghosts dominate and suppress the underworld. I'm wolf ancestor of the semi-hidden Tianshan sect, Li Jiuyo. A hint of fear finally appeared on the wolf ancestor's face. He slowly got up and bowed to the old man to show his highest respect. Chapter 749. Li Jiuyo was the best cultivator of ice spells in the world. He was even more famous than Chen Anping. He had been famous at the end of the Qing dynasty. Although Wolf Ancestor was powerful, he was still inferior to this old man. So, he didn't dare to act rashly. You? According to your cultivation system, you reached the peak of the human celestial realm a year ago and are even more powerful than Wolf Ancestor. But compared with me, you are still too weak. Facing Li Jiuyo, Jiang Tian flicked his sleeves and still looked at him disdainfully. Many powerhouses were stunned. Jiang Tian had indeed killed a human celestial before, but this old man was at the peak of the human celestial realm. He was so arrogant that he didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Ha, Kang Te Chu, you are too arrogant. Hearing that, Li Jiuyo laughed wildly. A powerful murderous aura shot up to the sky and even the clouds in the sky were restrained. His face was gloomy and ferocious. His voice was like the cry of an owl or the whisper of an underground demon. He said sarcastically, "You are just a rogue cultivator from the secular world. How can you compare with me? Now that you have seen my peerless power, don't you realize the huge gap between you and me?" At this time, everyone nodded in their hearts. The gap between Jiang Tian and Li Jiuyo was not just a gap, but a chasm. An insurmountable chasm. Li Jiuyo had lived for more than 200 years and could control billions of snowflakes within a radius of 10 miles. His Dharma power was so vast and deep that it was like a vast ocean. Jiang Tian was only in his 20s. No matter how talented he was, it was difficult for him to reach such a cultivation level. Besides, if you think I am the only one who wants to kill you today, you are wrong. Hearing Li Jiuyo's words. Could it be that there are more powerhouses? Everyone was shocked. Up there. Some powerhouses suddenly felt something and looked up at the sky in horror. Whoosh! 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 Suddenly, in the depths of the rolling clouds and auroras, many figures jumped down from the clouds. Some of them were not afraid of the height of 1,000 meters and directly fell to the ground, causing the ground to tremble. Some spread their wings of genuine qi and glided for a while like huge falcons before landing steadily. The most eye-catching one was the Taoist priest in the lead. He directly rode on the clouds and floated over like an immortal. A total of 6 figures landed on the ground. The leader was about 30 years old. He had sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. He was dressed as a Taoist. He wore a loose robe with large sleeves. He had a handsome temperament. There was a sword embroidered on the chest of his robe. This person cupped his fists, looked around, and said with a smile, "Dian Sung sect leader Zhou Zixuan greets everyone." Zhou Zixuan, looks like you've broken through the half-step human immortal realm and the human immortal realm. Congratulations. Li Jiuyo said with a strange laugh. Riding on the clouds, traversing the void. This was also the mark of a human immortal. Many of the Russian experts were also shocked. They looked at each other in dismay, their hearts filled with shock and emotion. Hua Xia's cultivation world truly had a deep foundation. 2 human immortals were born in one day. In the world of the world's top experts, Hua Xia didn't seem to stand out. They were far less famous than Europe's Holy See, Umbra Parliament, Pantheon, and America's Cosmic Shield and Blue Storm. There didn't seem to be many immortal realm cultivators or human immortals. Now, only Jiang Tian and Yi Zhantian were famous. But in just a few minutes, a peak human immortal and a beginner human immortal had appeared. If this news were to spread, it would definitely cause a huge uproar and shock the entire world of experts. However, it wasn't strange. Hua Xia's civilization had a long history and was shining brightly. When a devastating disaster struck, the Hua Xia people didn't run away like the Jews or pray for the mercy of the heavens to give them a Noah's Arkansas. Instead, they worked hard to fight, from the Great 98 flood to the world-shocking earthquake. In order to solve the problem of transportation between the north and the south, hundreds of years ago, the Hua Xia people opened up the Beijing-Hangzhou Grand Canal, which was equivalent to the length of the United Kingdom. In order to solve the problem of floods and irrigation, the Chinese people built the Dujianjian Dam, which had been in use for more than 2,000 years. In order to resist foreign aggression and protect the civilians, the Chinese people built the Great Wall. If 1 mile was not enough, then 10,000 miles. In terms of time, 5,000 years ago, the Chinese people faced the flood like the ancient Egyptians. 4,000 years ago, they played with bronze like the ancient Babylonians. 3,000 years ago, they thought about philosophy like the ancient Greeks. 2,000 years ago, they went on expeditions like the Romans. 1,000 years ago, they were as rich as the Arabs. 500 years ago, they wandered the ocean like the Spaniards. Now, they were competing with the United States. For 5,000 years, the Chinese people had been playing mahjong on the table of the world, while the other countries had changed many rounds. The core of the spirit of Chinese civilization was that man can conquer nature, and the courage to transform oneself and nature. The understanding of nature also took into account the oneness of man and nature, and was good at using nature and external forces. This was actually related to the essence of cultivation, going against nature, and following nature. Therefore, the cultivation civilization of Hua Xia had also become a bright pearl in human history. It could be said that on a global scale, Hua Xia cultivators were a force that could not be ignored. However, many Hua Xia cultivators were quiet and didn't want to cause trouble, so they didn't know. Zhou Zixuan, you want to be my enemy too? Jiang Tian snorted and raised his eyebrows. In my eyes, you're just an ant. Master Kong, The old man knows that you're very strong, but if you resist stubbornly today, there's no chance of you surviving. Zhou Zixuan shook his head and said regretfully, the old man and fellow Taoist Zhang Qianlei were very close back then. They used to sleep together and talk all night. I heard that you're also friends with him, so I don't want to see you die. If you kowtow to the Wolf King and admit your mistakes, I'll intercede on your behalf and let you live. Zhou Zixuan, you guys are too funny. Jiang Tian said disdainfully, the three of you are still too far away from the sage immortals. Are there any earth immortals? I'll kill a few of them. As soon as these words came out, everyone went crazy. They couldn't believe it and thought that Jiang Tian had gone crazy. An earth immortal. His strength was equivalent to the Sage King of the West. That was a peerless powerhouse with a lifespan of more than 300 years. They could destroy a city with a sword and shake a mountain with one hand. They could overturn rivers and seas, shatter mountains and rivers, and form rivers. They were almost immortal and comparable to true gods. Even in the Holy See, which had a strong foundation, there were only a few earth immortals and sage kings in the past 1,000 years. Because there were so few earth immortals and sages, they were almost legendary and mythical, so they were also called legends. But Jiang Tian was shouting that a few earth immortals would be killed by him. This was simply the biggest joke in the world. He really didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Hearing this, Zhou Zixuan was so angry that he laughed at Jiang Tian. He simply didn't want to bother. Okay, that's the old man's fault. But today, there might be a few earth immortals for you to kill. Kang Teichu, you're so arrogant. You even want to kill an earth immortal. No wonder you even dared to kill my sister, Hao Hongmei. At this moment, a dazzling red light pierced through the void and came across. The sword radiance was dazzling and the red light filled the sky. It was like a long rainbow, suppressing the colorful auroras in the sky. Clang! A huge mountain more than 600 meters high was directly pierced through by the red light and exploded. Instantly, waves of snow surged into the sky, and rocks flew into the air. After shooting hundreds of meters, they smashed into the ground, causing another earthquake. Oh my God! Who is so powerful? This attack is as powerful as a missile. All the powerhouses present were scared out of their wits and couldn't believe it. As soon as this powerhouse appeared, his sword chi pierced through the sky and destroyed the mountains. It was so overbearing and fierce that it was much more powerful than Zhou Zixuan and Li Jiuyo. He is definitely at the peak of the human immortal or half a step to earth immortal. Some Russian powerhouses even screamed and crawled on the ground, trembling. This kind of destructive power was beyond the reach of human beings. It was too powerful and destructive, just like the ancient deities. In front of this destructive power, even the wolf ancestor's pupils contracted and he shouted in surprise, "Is it him?" Yes, it's Hao Taichung, the top swordsman at the end of the Qing dynasty, the sword cultivator of Mount Shu and the sect leader of Mount Amei. Zhou Zixuan bowed respectfully to the distance. This old guy is so hot-tempered. Every time he appears, he will make a big scene. Li Jiuyo's face was full of jealousy and he snorted. But look at this situation, this old guy didn't cultivate in seclusion for decades in vain. He has already become a blood divine sword and is half a step to earth immortal. At this time, the Wolf King's heart skipped a beat and his face changed color. After Hao Taichung's arrival, the Wolf King didn't have much confidence in Jiang Tian. Yes, Jiang Tian had killed Situ Yuanhao, a human immortal. But Situ Yuanhao had just reached the human immortal level and was only half a step away. Many people guessed that Jiang Tian's cultivation was only at the middle stage of the human immortal, which meant that there was a big gap between him and a half step to earth immortal. No matter how powerful Jiang Tian's cultivation art was, it was difficult to make up for the gap in cultivation with cultivation art. Is this person also coming for Mr. Jiang? Why did Mr. Jiang offend so many powerhouses? I'm afraid Mr. Jiang is in danger this time. Berezov and the other oligarchs hesitated and wondered if they should leave Jiang Tian's side. They used to be the Wolf King's subordinates, but now they all felt that it was irrational for the Wolf King to side with Jiang Tian. How Taichung's sword could break mountains and shake mountains. The strength he had displayed was too terrifying and powerful. But when faced with this kind of majestic power, people would feel very weak, helpless, and uneasy, and their hearts would be filled with fear. The red light spread out and finally converged, turning into 3 silhouettes. 2 young people, a man and a woman, had an ethereal temperament. They were like immortals who walked on snow without leaving a trace. They clustered around an old man. Not to mention the old man, just the 2 young people were outstanding and outstanding. They were also powerful and profound, making many powerhouses present feel ashamed of their inferiority. This man and woman were Bai Dicheng and Song Shuangyan. They came hand in hand like a couple. Jiang Tian, I didn't expect that I would become a disciple of Amei sect and become the pro-disciple of sect leader Hao, right? You're dead today. Song Shuangyan's jade-white chin was slightly raised. Her eyes were cold and disdainful, like a god overlooking an ant. Chapter 750. She knew how powerful Jiang Tian was. After all, Jiang Tian's battle record was there. She was not a fool. But in her opinion, compared to her master, Jiang Tian was still far too weak. Who was Hao Taichung? The Amei Sword Sect's headmaster. The Amei Sword Sect was the second in the world among the semi-hidden sections. Their martial arts were pure and vast. Their foundation was deep, their history was deep, and their martial arts were powerful. They were second only to Kunlun. In Song Shuangyan's opinion, even if Jiang Tian had some achievements, he was just a rogue cultivator from the secular world. How could he be compared to the headmaster of a famous sect? It was like comparing a street punk and a fighting grandmaster. They were not at the same level. Jiang Tian, you broke my meridians and destroyed my cultivation. But Ancestor Xian has already helped me repair my meridians. Now I can still cultivate. My cultivation has even improved. You didn't expect this, did you? Bai Dicheng said proudly. Bai Dicheng, you stupid roe deer. Don't you know that Song Shuangyan is a jinx? After Jiang Tian saw the 2 young people, his face was full of ridicule. Lu Lishuan was already jinxed to death by him. You still want to be jinxed by him? Do you think your life is too long? Hearing this, the 2 of them were so angry that they almost exploded on the spot. Jiang Tian's mouth was simply too vicious. With one sentence, he scolded the 2 of them. But in the next moment, Jiang Tian was too lazy to pay attention to them. His pupils slightly constricted as he stared at the old man. This old man had a leopard head and round eyes. His face was ferocious. He had a wide mouth and fangs. His murderous intent was very strong. He was ferocious, just like Yan Qixia in the movies. This old man is Hao Taichung. Sure enough, he is just like his sister Hao Hongmei. He looks like the old man and old woman on the bus. Jiang Tian secretly despised in his heart. Kang Taichu, why don't you fight with me quickly? Or, you can just cut your throat to apologize, so that I don't have to do it. Hao Taichung's murderous intent was dense. As soon as he came up, he pointed at Jiang Tian and roared loudly. Old man, you're too weak. Jiang Tian smiled lazily and shook his head in disappointment. You're just a half-step earthen immortal. Not enough for me to kill you with just one finger. Earth immortal. You guys are too weak. You don't even have an earth immortal. Immeasurable heavenly sovereign. Hao Taichung cursed, I'm a half-step earth immortal. Killing you is as easy as killing a chicken. He took a step forward and charged towards Jiang Tian. But suddenly, a soft force attacked, and Hao Taichung was firmly blocked, unable to take another step forward. Whose cultivation method is so profound that he is actually an earth immortal? Hao Taichung was startled. Suddenly, his brows furrowed. Is he here? He had condensed his blood and stopped his lifespan for many years. He actually came back to life. The founder of the Hong sect, Situ Shao, is here to pay respects to Master Kong. Suddenly, a warm voice sounded. A figure appeared in front of Jiang Tian out of thin air. The man was wearing a long green robe. His hair was tied up with a jade hairpin. He looked handsome and dashing. He looked like a scholar from the Qing dynasty who had traveled hundreds of years to come to this world. He did not have the slightest bit of aura, but he gave people a feeling that he was otherworldly and had the demeanor of an immortal. He looked like an immortal that had descended to the mortal world. It's the founder of the Hong sect, Situ Shao. Oh my God! He has come back to life. Hao Taichung, Li Jiuliu, Wolf Ancestor, and Zhou Zixuan were all shocked by Situ Shao's arrival. Greetings, Senior Situ Shao. They bowed one after another, lowering their arrogant heads and performing a Taoist salute with reverence on their faces. Situ Shao's status was too high. He was the founder of the Hong sect, an earth immortal, and the former #1 on the legendary roll. The Hong sect was as powerful as a country. In the history of Huaxia, the Tiandi gang, the Tiandi gang, and the Tiandi gang were all related to the Situ family. The Situ family was involved in all the major events that affected the course of history, and they even played an important role. Almost all of the famous Chinese societies in the world were founded by the disciples of the Hong sect, or their descendants. Even during the founding ceremony, the descendant of Situ Shao, the leader of the Hong sect, Situ Meitang, stood behind him. The lawyer of the Hong sect and Situ Meitang was none other than the famous Roosevelt. That was how powerful the Hong sect and the Situ family were, and how much influence they had in the world. You flatter me, fellow Taoists. Situ Shao returned the greetings one by one. He was very modest and considerate. As Situ Shao approached, Jiang Tian furrowed his brows and said, "You have a lifespan of over 300 years. You are even older than the wolf ancestor. However, you are just an ordinary human being. You don't have a powerful blood qi. Plus, you are just an earth immortal. Your lifespan is at most 200 years. How did you manage to survive?" "Master Kong, I am a dying man. I have been using the blood coagulation art to prolong my life. In fact, there are many other overlords like me who have managed to preserve their lifespan. They just haven't been born yet." Situ Shao shook his head with a wry smile. Then, his eyes widened as he looked at Jiang Tian with a half-smile. People like Master Kong come from the outer space. They have the potential to become deities and immortals. I am so envious of them. Hee, old man, you are so mean. Jiang Tian smiled and narrowed his eyes. Do you want me to fall into the sea of people's war? In fact, after hearing Situ Shao's words, Hao Taichung, Li Jiuliu, Zhou Zixuan and the others looked at each other. They were so excited that their hands were shaking. Previously, they had suspected that Jiang Tian's cultivation art was from the ruins of immortality. Otherwise, it would not be so magical. It could make Jiang Tian stand at the top of the world and defeat many immortal cultivators in just a few years. However, they were not sure. After all, the legend of the ruins of immortality was very vague. Many people did not believe it. However, since Situ Shao said so, this matter was set in stone. At this time, they all had a common enemy. They wanted to capture Jiang Tian together and force him to tell them the cultivation art. Fellow cultivator Jiang, since you don't deny it, I think my speculation is correct. A trace of excitement flashed across Situ Shao's face. He stopped talking and used his psychic power to send a voice transmission. After I was revived, I carefully studied all your information. I suspect that you are either a visitor from outer space or the reincarnation of an old demon immortal. You are definitely not an ordinary human being. Why? Jiang Tian asked with a half-smile. Cultivation can be obtained through external means, whether it is through the accumulation of cultivation resources, the acquisition of ancient cultivation arts, or the forcible inheritance of immortals through the enlightenment method. Situ Zhao's eyes were as bright as torches. He still used his psychic power to send a voice transmission so that only Jiang Tian could hear. But a person's temperament and way of doing things can't. Oh. Jiang Tian said lightly. Master Kong even dares to fight against the superpowers of the world. He regards billions of immortals as ants and dust. He uses the superpowers as his chessboard and the common people as his chess pieces. Situ Xiao said decisively. You have cut off all emotions and hatred. Your temperament is extremely strong. It is as if nothing in the world can move you. How can a young man in his 20s have such a temperament? You must be an old monster who has lived for tens of thousands of years and has seen true gods and true immortals. You may even be a higher life form. Then you still dare to challenge me? Jiang Tian looked at Situ Xiao and was a little surprised. Just based on the fact that Situ Xiao was able to guess his origin, he was far superior to other powerhouses. Master Kong, I am only an earth immortal. The lifespan of an earth immortal is less than 300 years. If I hadn't stopped my lifespan for a few decades, I would have been a pile of dirt by now. Situ Zhao's eyes flashed with a touch of sadness. I became an earth immortal 100 years ago. But in the following 30 years, my cultivation didn't improve at all. It was as if there was a layer of invisible but firm imprisonment that suppressed me and prevented me from moving forward. Looking at Jiang Tian, Situ Zhao's eyes gradually became excited. But with Master Kang's arrival, it will be different. Perhaps a battle with Grandmaster Jiang will allow me to attain enlightenment in the Tao during battle, step into the heavenly immortal realm, and ascend. Good. Jiang Tian's heart skipped a beat, and he said slowly with an appreciative expression, since returning to this world, I have met two people with excellent talents and temperaments. One is you, and the other is Zhang Qianlei. I will give you an opportunity. I can take you as my disciple. It could be said that Situ Zhao's talent was really high. His current cultivation was equivalent to that of a half-step foundation establishment cultivator. It was just that the cultivation method he practiced was too poor. Although his true qi was vigorous and surging, it was still true qi and could not be compared with true essence. However, it was very rare to be able to condense such a cultivation on this dead planet where spiritual qi was exhausted. It required great ambition, great perseverance, and great comprehension. If Situ Xiao entered the world of outer cultivators, his future would be limitless. More importantly, even though he knew that Jiang Tian was from outer space, Situ Xiao still had the desire to fight. To put it bluntly, in Situ Xiao's eyes, Jiang Tian was an alien. He was another kind of high-level life form whose power was unpredictable and full of unknowns. But Situ Xiao still wanted to fight. At this time, Situ Xiao showed an indomitable spirit and courage. His obsession to become stronger was what a cultivator needed the most and also the most important thing. Therefore, Jiang Tian cherished talent and bestowed him with a stroke of good fortune. Jiang Tian's words were spoken directly. Hearing this, everyone was shocked and couldn't believe it. Jiang Tian was too crazy. He was seriously crazy. Situ Xiao was a real earth immortal, which was equivalent to the Sage King in the West. But Jiang Tian wanted to take him as his disciple. Just how condescending was this, looking down on the heroes of the world. He was almost ignorant. It was because he was ignorant that he was fearless. Taking an earth immortal as his disciple. Could it be that his cultivation was at the level of heaven immortal? This was something that had never happened before in history. Master Kong, don't be rash. You are absolutely no match for Wolf King, let alone an earth immortal. Quit while you're ahead and apologize. Anphia hurriedly persuaded him. She had a relationship with Jiang Tian. Her life was saved by Jiang Tian. She admired Jiang Tian very much and really didn't want Jiang Tian to court his own death. Master Kong, do you know what you are doing? Berezov and the others were anxious. Berezov was very disappointed in Jiang Tian. He had wanted to mediate for Jiang Tian for the sake of his daughter. But after Jiang Tian said this, even a deity couldn't save him. You have some ability, but he is a human immortal and an earth immortal. He is like a deity, not an ordinary human. Chapter 751. Yes. Apologize. Otherwise, we'll make sure you die a horrible death. Song Shuangyan and the others from Beidasheng also shouted angrily. Apologize? Who in this world deserves my apology? Jiang Tian frowned and looked indifferent. He didn't even look at Anfia and the others. This made Anfia feel ashamed, angry and resentful. How dare he ignore me? You're about to die and you still ignore me. Your Excellency Wolf King, this Master Kong is too good at causing trouble. You have to make a wise choice. Seeing that Jiang Tian couldn't be persuaded, Berezov and the other magnates said. You don't know Master Kang's ability. I swear to follow Master Kong until death. Wolf King smiled coldly. But in fact, Alisando was putting up a strong front. Because he had no other choice. He had already shown his allegiance to Jiang Tian. Even if he returned to the wolf ancestor's side, the wolf ancestor wouldn't let him go. Since he was going to die anyway, he might as well fight to the end. Maybe he would still have a chance to live. From now on, our family will have nothing to do with Your Excellency Wolf King and Master Kong. At this moment, Berezov and the other magnates had chosen to stand against Jiang Tian without any hesitation. A gentleman wouldn't stand under a collapsing wall. With the earth-level deities and a group of human-level deities, Jiang Tian would definitely die this time. They didn't want to be implicated. And these overlords would definitely deal with Jiang Tian's henchmen. Wolf King followed Jiang Tian, so they had to cut ties with him. I'm trying to persuade you, but you ignored me. You're really stubborn. Just pretend I never knew you. In the end, Anfia snorted angrily and left Jiang Tian's side, standing on the wolf ancestor's side. For a moment. Behind Jiang Tian, there was only the Wolf King and a few moon-worshipping wolves. It was as if they had been abandoned by the entire world. Jiang Tian, look, even your friends have abandoned you. Don't you know the situation you're facing? Song Shuangyan said with a face full of ridicule, you really don't know what's good for you. Who do you think Situ Shao is? The ancestral master of the Hong sect is an earth-level deity, a real immortal. How dare you ask him to be your disciple? He has always been bold and arrogant. Bai Dicheng also laughed mockingly. But in reality, they are nothing more than ants in the secular world, frogs at the bottom of a well. How could they know the vastness of the world, the brilliance of the sun and moon, and the vastness of the universe? Take Senior Situ as your disciple. You dare to say that? You're boasting shamelessly. Li Jiuyo laughed strangely, his face full of ridicule and disdain. A grain of rice dares to compete with the sun and moon. Not to mention being Senior Situ's master, you don't even have the qualifications to fight with Senior Situ. I can kill you with a raise of my hand. Hao Taichong revealed a ferocious look and laughed sinisterly. Senior Situ, as long as you give the order, I will slap him to death for you. The wolf ancestor also sneered and shook his head. Kong Te Chu, you're courting death. How do you know how powerful Senior Situ is? Don't talk about Mr. Situ, I can kill you. Zhou Zixuan shook his head with a bitter smile and sighed regretfully. Kong Te Chu was definitely a talented person, but unfortunately, he was too sharp and didn't know the principle that the strong were easy to break. Situ Shao shook his head and ignored the crowd. Instead, a trace of determination flashed in his eyes, and then he sent a message with his divine sense. Master Kong, I know you have good intentions. You should be qualified to be my master, but admitting defeat without a fight will greatly disturb my Tao heart. So, I must fight. But I want to fight with Master Kang alone and experience Master Kang's supreme cultivation technique. So, you should understand the grudges between you and them first. I will not interfere. Very well. Jiang Tian nodded at him, then flicked his sleeves, glanced at the crowd, and sneered. How Taichung, didn't you want to slap me to death? Come on. Didn't you all want to kill me? Then I also want to trample on you all and enjoy the sword vault alone. Then, let's fight. Kang Taichu, you're too arrogant. The wolf ancestor's murderous intent was the strongest. He stood up and pulled out his mace from the snow and roared. You've offended me time and time again. Today, I'll kill you in front of everyone. I'll let you and the entire human race know that the Icefield Wolf clan is inviolable. He approached Jiang Tian and didn't forget to stare coldly at the wolf ancestor. Wolf ancestor, after I kill Kang Taichu, I'll settle the score with you and the entire Moon Wolf clan. You betrayed the wolf clan. Kang Taichu, do you have any last words? The wolf ancestor stood 100 meters away from Jiang Tian and sneered. Do you have any last words? Hurry up and say it, because you're going to die soon. Jiang Tian retorted. Mr. Jiang, you're courting death. You've offended God. Kneel down and surrender, or my family won't let you go. Berezov and the other oligarchs scolded harshly. Mr. Jiang, how dare you disrespect the wolf ancestor? This is a heinous crime. Why don't you apologize? Anphia hurriedly said. This was the best time to show their loyalty to the wolf ancestor. They all wanted to humiliate Jiang Tian to win the favor of the wolf ancestor and avoid being punished. Jiang Taichu, how dare you disrespect a deity? You'll be killed without mercy. Many Russian overlords and the werewolves of the glacier plain shouted. In the eyes of these Russian overlords, the wolf ancestor was the guardian of Russia during the Russian Empire and their biggest backer. He was very respected and was like a god. Kill Kang Taichu and let him die without a burial place. From now on, my family will worship the Icefield Wolf clan. My Ken's father jumped the highest and shouted. The pain of losing his son made him hate Jiang Tian to the core. He had completely betrayed the moon-worshipping Wolf King, so he had to shed all pretense of cordiality. Kang Taichu, who do you think you are talking to? However, the wolf ancestor laughed. His laughter was full of contempt and mockery. I have 300 years of life. I once drank with the Russian Tsar and defeated Napoleon's French expeditionary force. Ant, kneel down and surrender. Blabber, blabber, don't you find it annoying that you're always like this? Jiang Tian mocked in disdain and attacked without holding back. Jiang Tian used a minor divine power he had learned when he reached the 8th level of Qi refinement. He swatted at the wolf ancestor as if he was swatting a fly. As the palm landed, a giant golden palm about 8 meters long appeared and enveloped the wolf ancestor with the weight of Mount Tai. This move, one hand covers the sky, was very magical. Each of the true essence particles was engraved with Tao runes and could easily crush a transcendent grandmaster. The particles formed talisman inscriptions and dharma laws, forming a powerful grand seal. What is this? The wolf ancestor was alarmed when he was enveloped by the divine power. He felt as if thousands of mountains were pressing down on him and he could not withstand the powerful force. What was even more terrifying was that he made a series of hand seals and his lips moved rapidly. However, he could not use any of his dharma spells. The spirit chi of heaven and earth in the area was sealed. Break. The wolf ancestor had no choice but to use brute force to break the spell. He raised the mace with both hands and thrust it at the divine power. Lifting the mace was only a small movement, but the wolf ancestor was already exhausted. Blood oozed out from the corner of his mouth. The next second. Boom! The mace exploded and the wolf ancestor was forced to kneel on the ground. In a blink, both of his knees cracked and blood gushed out. His head and waist were still bent over as if he was about to fall to the ground. Everyone was shocked by the development. What? The wolf ancestor can't even withstand a slap from him. Anfia exclaimed in disbelief. This. Many of the oligarchs turned pale and their hearts skipped a beat. That scene was too shocking. It was like a legend. He used a secret technique to seal the spirit chi of heaven and earth in that space. It's too terrifying. Zhou Zixuan exclaimed. Even Li Jiuliu and Hao Taichong were slightly moved. Their faces were solemn as they considered how to break the seal. Seals were secrets that were not passed on. Generally, they relied on array formations and needed to be set up in advance. For Jiang Tian to create a seal with a raise of his hand was simply like a legend. It was unbelievable. Under everyone's shocked gazes. You think you're amazing just because you drank with the Russian Tsar? Jiang Tian walked over lazily and slapped the wolf ancestor's face, shattering his cheeks. You think you're amazing just because you have 300 years of lifespan? Smack. Jiang Tian slapped him again. The other side of the wolf ancestor's face was also covered in blood, revealing his broken cheekbones and countless canine teeth. The pitiful wolf ancestor had roamed the Siberian tundra and the Arctic Circle, and had been invincible in Russia for hundreds of years. At this moment, he was like a little rabbit under the foot of a ferocious tiger, and he didn't have the slightest strength to struggle or resist, allowing Jiang Tian to trample and slaughter him. Call the wind and call the snow to kill 30,000 people. Why don't you show me? Jiang Tian slapped him again. Smack. The wolf ancestor's jaw was dislocated. Blood mixed with snot, teeth, and minced meat dripped down. The wolf ancestor was in a sorry state at this time. Who gave you the courage to ask me to kneel down and surrender? Liang Jingru. Jiang Tian raised his leg and kicked him in the chest, sending him flying a few meters away. The wolf ancestor's sternum was caved in and blood was gushing out of his orifices. His lungs and leaves were coming out of his nostrils. He was barely breathing. How is this possible? Berezov, Anfia, and the other oligarchs of the Russian secular world were stunned. Kang Taichu is so powerful. Many Russian masters were speechless. Their expressions seemed to be frozen and they became clay sculptures. They had thought that the wolf ancestor could kill Jiang Tian with a snap of his fingers, but Jiang Tian had defeated the wolf ancestor in seconds. Instant kill. Moreover, it was a one-sided beating and violence. Yes. It wasn't a battle between masters of equal strength. The wolf ancestor couldn't fight back at all. Many Russian overlords were shocked and their hearts almost jumped out of their throats. Many people were so scared that they couldn't stand still. That was the wolf ancestor. 300 years of life, powerful bloodline and profound dharma power. He killed 30,000 soldiers alone like a real god. Anyone who crosses this line will die. Why don't you kill me? Jiang Tian took a large step forward and crossed the line. He looked at the wolf ancestor with disdain and mocked. Chapter 752. Jiang Tian didn't stop. He arrived in front of wolf ancestor and stepped on his chest. The corner of his mouth curved into a disdainful smile as he glanced at everyone with a cold smile. God. How can a four-legged beast be the god of the Russians? You're all despicable. If he is a god, then everyone, what am I, the one who slays a god, considered? You want to kill me? Jiang Tian looked at Michael's father and sneered. I'm stepping on the wolf ancestor now. Do you still dare? Master Kong, I know I was wrong. Please spare my life. Michael's father knelt on the ground in fear. His heart almost exploded. He was filled with fear and regret. Even the wolf ancestor had been slapped to the ground. How could he have the strength and capital to challenge Jiang Tian? Die. Jiang Tian snorted and didn't do anything. Maichen's father's body exploded, turning into countless pieces of translucent flesh and blood that scattered to the ground. Master Kong, please spare my life. I know I was wrong. I didn't recognize Mount Tai. Seeing this, Berezov and the other Russian oligarchs were all stunned. They knelt on the ground, trembling in fear. They didn't dare to raise their heads. At this moment, they were shocked, terrified, regretful, and wished for nothing more than to slap themselves a few times to vent their hatred. Why were they so shameless? They shouldn't have been so eager to show their loyalty. Even if they were a team, they shouldn't have stood on the wolf ancestor's side. Compared to Jiang Tian, the wolf ancestor was nothing. He was like a tiny ant in front of a prehistoric Tyrannosaurus rex. It could be said that Jiang Tian had this kind of power. As long as he wanted to kill them, no one could stop him. Even the Russian emperor would have to avoid him. Anfia also knelt on the ground, but she was the most regretful. Because she actually had the opportunity to follow Jiang Tian. After all, the wolf ancestor had been the middleman, and she had some ties with Jiang Tian. She had brought Jiang Tian on an adventure, and Jiang Tian had saved her life. It was a rare opportunity to face Snow Demon together. But she had forcefully destroyed it. Moreover, she had seen Jiang Tian defeat the Snow Demon with her own eyes. She should be the most aware of Jiang Tian's strength. However, the wolf ancestor was, after all, a terrifying existence in Russian legends. He was like a god, so the knowledge he had created a blind spot and shackled her thinking. It was too late to say anything now. She had missed it. Only the Wolf King Alexander straightened his body, his face full of excitement and exhilaration. It seemed that following Master Kong was a wise choice. Master Kong was too domineering. He was always full of surprises. With the death of the wolf ancestor and the annihilation of the Ice Plains wolf clan, he was now the strongest wolf clan in the entire world. Master Kong, spare my life. My clansmen and I are willing to submit to you and be your dogs and servants. The wolf ancestor finally recovered from its stupor and admitted defeat. This scene left many people dumbfounded. The wolf ancestor, who had once chatted happily with the Russian Tsar, was willing to be this person's lackey. If this spread out, who would believe it? It was like a myth. At this moment, they couldn't help but recall Jiang Tian's words, "A good dog doesn't block the way." When Jiang Tian said this, many people thought that Jiang Tian was crazy and didn't know what was good for him. But now, it seemed that Jiang Tian was right. The wolf ancestor actually bowed his head and was willing to be Jiang Tian's lackey. Begging for mercy was the rational choice, but the next moment, the wolf ancestor recklessly threatened. Master Kong, as you can see, I have a lot of clansmen. There are hundreds of Ice Plains wolves here. If you kill me, there are also some wolves wandering around the northern islands. You dare to threaten me? Fine. You have some guts. Jiang Tian laughed out loud. I'll let you see with your own eyes how I kill all your clansmen with one sword strike. The next moment, Jiang Tian flicked his finger a few times. A whirlpool of blood floated out from the wolf ancestor's chest and formed a strange red talisman. Suddenly, hundreds of blood threads shot out in all directions from the talisman. Every single one of the Direfield wolves was connected to each and every one of them. Some of them even shot into the depths of the heavens, and no one knew where they were going. This is bloodline gravitational kill. Seeing this, a trace of fear and despair appeared on the wolf ancestor's face. Something like that. You know what's good for you. This is called the karmic severing curse. Jiang Tian said with a smile as he controlled the hundreds of red threads. The human body was full of mysteries. It was a treasure trove. The development of science and technology was the power that humans used to control and modify the outside world. Cultivation, on the other hand, was to stimulate the potential of the human body and condense all kinds of divine powers. There was a mysterious bloodline connection between humans and their kin, and they influenced each other. Some twins even had a mysterious telepathy that couldn't be explained. It was like quantum entanglement. And Jiang Tian's method was to use the blood connection between relatives to kill. Once the spell was cast, all the clansmen in the world who were related to the wolf ancestor would die. Master Kong, no. The wolf ancestor howled miserably, truly like the wailing of ghosts and howling of wolves, miserable and shrill. Die. Pa. Jiang Tian didn't care. He grabbed the blood talisman with his right hand and pulled it into his chest like a fisherman pulling in a net. Immediately, a few crystal-clear souls were pulled toward him, which vaguely resembled the dire wolf tribe. There were at least a few hundred of them. Some of them were very healthy and powerful. They roared and struggled angrily, kicking up snowflakes and breaking the ice. They wanted to break free from the blood threads. Everyone was terrified. The divine souls could affect reality. The masters of these divine souls were immortal state overlords. Some of the divine souls were weak and had been eroded by the wind and snow. They were distorted and blurry as they knelt on the ground and begged for mercy. At this time, many wolf servants and the Ice Plains wolf ancestor had fallen to the ground. They were motionless and had become cold corpses. In fact, 303 of the Ice Plains wolf ancestor that were related to the Ice Plains wolf ancestor had died in an instant. How could this be? The wolf ancestor was dumbfounded. His face was filled with despair. A strong sense of regret rushed to the top of his head and hot tears rolled down his cheeks. This was equivalent to the extinction of the entire Ice Plains wolf ancestor. Not a single one of them was left alive. This was an unacceptable defeat for the wolf ancestor. It was also an unbearable pain and regret. Even the 3 rivers and 5 seas couldn't wash away the pain and regret. What bullshit sword tomb. Whoever wants it can have it. I will not stay far away from it. If he could live his life again, he would never have provoked the devil Jiang Tian. Yes. Devil. He killed an entire clan from thousands of miles away without leaving a single one alive. He was simply a demon from hell. Go to hell. Jiang Tian waved his hand. A golden wave of fury surged through the sky, crushing the souls of the werewolves and sending them flying in all directions. This is the true annihilation of the Ice Plains wolf ancestor. Countless Russian overlords trembled. A strong sense of fear gripped their bodies and made it difficult for them to even breathe. Jiang Tian was too terrifying. He used his bloodline as a guide to capture the souls of the Ice Plains wolf ancestor. More importantly, he didn't kill ordinary people. The Ice Plains wolf ancestor had a powerful bloodline. Some of them even knew Dharma spells and were comparable to transcendent state warriors or even immortal state warriors. However, Jiang Tian still killed them as if they were flies. This was so shocking that it made people feel as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. I guess you think there's no point in living anymore. You're too lonely, right? Jiang Tian's eyes were cold as he kicked the wolf ancestor's chest. Boom! The Wolf King's body exploded in an instant, turning into countless pieces of translucent flesh and blood that rained down like a rain of flesh. Everyone saw that the wolf ancestor's soul had also been destroyed by Jiang Tian. There was no chance of him being resurrected. The wolf ancestor was dead. Greetings, Master Kong. From now on, we'll be Master Kang's servants and won't do anything rash. Many Russian overlords, including the priests, grand magi, and those who had awakened their physical bodies, rushed to kneel before Jiang Tian and kowtowed. The wolf ancestor could be said to be Russia's #1 hidden expert and also the world's #1 expert of the wolf clan. He had reached the level of immortal saint. Now, he was killed by Jiang Tian with a raise of his hand. Who would be a match for him? Who would dare to cause trouble? They were so scared that their souls were about to leave their bodies and they trembled. They were afraid that Jiang Tian would kill them if they were too slow. As for the oligarchs like Berezov, there was no need to mention them. In front of such a peerless overlord who had killed the wolf ancestor, their wealth, power, and reputation were nothing. Even if the Emperor of Russia was here, Jiang Tian would be able to kill him easily. Deal with the outside first, then deal with the inside. Jiang Tian kicked away a part of the wolf ancestor's body, and then his cold and indifferent gaze descended onto Hao Taichung, Li Jiuyo, Zhou Zishuan, and the others. He grinned. Now, it's your turn. Jiang Tian, do you think you're qualified to compete with my overlord just because you killed the wolf ancestor? You're courting death. Bai Diqing's expression changed several times. Then, he snorted and said arrogantly, do you know that 100 years ago, Master Hao was the most powerful swordsman at the end of the Qing dynasty and defeated the wolf ancestor of the north? If you know what's good for you, kneel down and beg for mercy. Kowtow to us 3 times and 9 times and call us your overlord. Then, maybe my overlord will spare your life. Bai Diqing hated Jiang Tian to the bone. He wanted nothing more than to eat Jiang Tian's flesh and skin. Only by grinding his bones and scattering his ashes would he be able to vent his hatred. He was the eldest son of the Bai family, the most powerful martial arts family in Yanjin and the leader of the Condor team. He was very influential both in Huaxia and in the secular world. He came from a famous family and lived a life of luxury and luxury. He was a powerful young grandmaster and was in charge of the Condor team. He had unparalleled power and a bright future. He was powerful in the entire Huaxia and even had the potential to replace Yi Zhantian. But all of this was ruined by Jiang Tian. The Bai family was destroyed and Bai Tianlei and Hao Hongmei were killed. The Bai family, a powerful martial arts family, was defeated and removed from Huaxia in one night. His cultivation was destroyed and the Condor team was disbanded. After he was exiled overseas, he lived a precarious life like a stray dog. He only dared to return to his country when Hao Taichung came out of seclusion. How can we spare his life? Today, he must die. At most, we can only leave his body intact. Song Shuangyan was beautiful and had an ethereal temperament. However, her voice was cold and vicious. We can't let the entire Jiang family go. Every one of them must die. Let's destroy the Taiqing sect and take their dojo and country. We'll turn Sidoni into the dojo of the Amei sword sect. Chapter 753. Jiang Tian chuckled. Song Shuangyan, do you know why I spared your life? You think I didn't dare to kill you in Yanjin? No, I want to kill you. Who can stop me? I asked you to lure Hao Taichung out. What do you mean? How dare you spout such arrogant words? Do you know that sect leader Hao is half a step away from earth-level deity? He can kill you with one finger. Kneel down and apologize. Bai Diqing and Song Shuangyan were enraged. Their faces turned red as they shouted at the same time. In their eyes, Hao Taichung was like a god. How could they allow Jiang Tian to blaspheme him? Song Shuangyan, you really jinxed your husband. Luckily, I abandoned you in time. Jiang Tian smiled faintly and suddenly pointed at White Emperor City. Bang! Bai Diqing's head exploded. Blood gushed out and his headless body fell to the ground. You died because you talked too much. Jiang Tian laughed disdainfully. I don't even want to kill this kind of ant. But I don't want to let him go. Then, Jiang Tian looked at Song Shuangyan and said calmly, Look, I said you jinxed your husband and you really did it. You. Jiang Tian, you devil. You will die a horrible death. Song Shuangyan was stunned at first. Then, she was so angry that her face turned green. She hated Jiang Tian to the core. Tears streamed down her face and she clenched her teeth. She was in so much pain that she couldn't get over it for a long time. Now, she and Bai Diqing had gotten to know each other, and they were in love with each other. They were just about to get along well with each other, yet in just a few days, she was killed by Jiang Tian. Master, why didn't you stop him? Song Shuangyan grabbed Hao Taichung's arm and felt wronged. How could I just watch Bai Diqing get killed? He is your great-great-grandson. Who would have thought that he would actually attack a junior? How despicable. He has lost the bearing of an expert. Hao Taichung's face was slightly embarrassed, and then he angrily scolded. How could he not have expected Jiang Tian to make a move? How could Jiang Tian let an ant like Bai Dicheng off with such a cheap mouth go? In fact, Hao Taichung had also stopped him. He had attacked 3 times in an instant, using spells, martial arts, and swordsmanship in an attempt to block Jiang Tian's finger light. However, it was completely useless. Jiang Tian had broken through it all the same, and White Emperor Cheng had been killed right under his nose. To Hao Taichung, heartache was secondary. After all, he was an expert who had bitterly cultivated for 100 years. He had long since severed his emotions and desires. He had transcended the mortal world and was close to being inhuman. He viewed blood relations as insignificant. Otherwise, how could he concentrate on cultivating bitterly and pursue the supreme great Tao if he was bound by emotions? However, he was extremely angry. His great-great-grandson was killed right under his nose. That was a slap to his face. It was a humiliation that he could not bear. Who was Jiang Tian? An itinerant cultivator who rose to prominence in the secular world. In the eyes of the semi-hidden sects, itinerant cultivators in the secular world were ants and dust. They had low statuses and were not worth mentioning. Who was he? He was the leader of the Amei sword sect. Amei was the orthodox Taoist sect and was almost on par with Kunlun. As the leader of such a famous sect, he could only watch helplessly as his descendant was killed. If this matter were to spread, he would be the biggest laughing stock in the semi-hidden sections. He would go down in infamy for 10,000 years. Kang Te-chu, today, I will kill you. Hao Taichung's eyes widened in anger. He roared loudly like a thunderclap and attacked directly. Boom! He took a step forward. With just one step, he was like a ferocious tiger, with endless power and lingering charm. Boom! He leaped 100 meters into the air and stood in midair. He suddenly stretched out his arm like a dragon emerging from the sea. He grabbed lightly and roared, innate chi, great dragon catching hand. Instantly, a giant palm that was 10 meters long condensed out of thin air. It was covered with dense scales as if it was made of steel. Its fingernails were like bone hooks, and it clawed at Jiang Tian. This is the secret art created by the founder of the Amei sect, the White Brow Immortal. It can capture dragons and tigers, kill demons and eliminate monsters. It's really terrifying. Zhou Zixuan was shocked by the sight and sighed at his own inferiority. Although the Amei sect focused on sword cultivation, as a large sect that had lasted for thousands of years, its foundation was too profound. All kinds of Xian sect internal arts, fist arts, palm arts, and body arts were powerful and far superior to those of ordinary sections. The great dragon catching hand swept across the sky. Wherever it passed, huge rocks collapsed and clouds flew into the sky. With the long tassel in his hand, he seemed to be able to catch turtles in the 5 seas and capture the moon in the 9 heavens. Run! Run! Many Russian overlords retreated, fearing that they would be implicated. A senior magus, who was as powerful as a transcendent magus, was only a little bit slower than Ji Hao, and was crushed into pieces by Ji Hao's dragon-catching hand. This Khanate Chi great dragon-catching hand has reached 90% completion. Seeing this, even Li Jiuyo was moved. He thought that it would take him some effort to break this move. 1,000 years ago, the White Brow Immortal caught a real dragon in the Min River with this great dragon-catching hand. Song Shuangyan raised her chin and looked at Jiang Tian with disdain, as if he were already a dead man. She mocked him as much as she could, as if she was the one who had used the great dragon-catching hand. Jiang Tian, you're just an ant in the mortal world. You don't know the vastness of the world and the power of the dragon. You want to fight with my master. You want to compete with the sun and the moon. You must be tired of living. Really? Jiang Tian sneered and pointed in the air. Freeze! As Jiang Tian finished speaking, The mighty great dragon capturing hand was actually frozen there, motionless, as if it was dead. What's going on? Song Shuangyan's gloating smile froze on her face. Her eyes were filled with horror as if she had seen a ghost. How is this possible? Hao Taichung was dumbstruck. His heart was thumping with fear. His feet slanted and he almost fell. The Khanate Chi Great Dragon Catching Hand was the trump card of the Ame Sword sect. At his level, he could crush tanks and destroy mountains. It contained a powerful force and profound Dharma power. Hao Taichung was confident that he could kill a man deity with one hand. But he didn't expect that Jiang Tian could freeze it with only one word. That was incredible. He couldn't even understand what Dharma access Jiang Tian had used. That was not the way to play the game, okay? Half-step to Earth deity. So what? Jiang Tian stepped on the air and suddenly disappeared from everyone's sight. The next moment, he appeared in front of Hao Taichung like a ghost. That's too fast. Can he break the sound barrier? A Russian powerhouse exclaimed. No. That's not breaking the sound barrier. The faster the body is, the more turbulent the airflow will be. But there's no turbulence at all. Zhou Zixuan broke out in a cold sweat as he watched. His face was already deathly pale. Could it be that Jiang Taichu was using the spatial manipulation divine art that allowed him to shrink space into an inch? I have to retreat. Hao Taichung had realized how terrifying Jiang Tian was. He wanted to distance himself and use the art of Shu Mountain. Why can't I move? Did he use some kind of restriction spell? But he found that no matter how hard he tried, the essence chi of heaven and earth remained motionless. He couldn't move at all, as if he had fallen into cement. Is the semi-hidden sect that great? Slap. Jiang Tian smiled disdainfully and slapped Hao Taichung's face, causing blood to spurt out from his nose. Kang Taichu, you. Hao Taichung's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He was so angry that he almost vomited blood. He was the sect master of Mount Ame, a grand master of the semi-hidden sect, respected by thousands of people. And yet, he had been slapped by Jiang Tian. That was a great humiliation. It was worse than his mother being humiliated by Jiang Tian. Another slap. Everyone exclaimed and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Mr. Jiang loved to slap people's faces. He had slapped the wolf ancestor before, but now it was Hao Taichung's turn. Wolf King Alexander, Zhou Zixuan, Li Jiuyo, and the others were shocked. Only those who had reached their level and surpassed the immortal state warriors knew what Jiang Tian's action meant. Was Hao Taichung a weakling? Didn't he have any means? If they thought so, they would be stupid and a big joke. He was a half-step human deity who controlled the sect and had thousands of Dharma spells at his fingertips. He could destroy mountains and cities with one slash. But at that moment, he couldn't use any of his means. That meant that the restriction created by Jiang Tian had completely isolated and imprisoned the spirit chi of heaven and earth in that area. It was like removing the firewood from the bottom of a cauldron, restraining all Dharma spells. That was too terrifying. It was terrifying. No matter how many means you had, without the spirit chi of heaven and earth, you couldn't use any Dharma spells. Kang Taichu is too powerful. I'm afraid the old man is no match for him. He's too weak. Zhou Zixuan shook his head regretfully, feeling sad and dispirited. He had just become a human deity and was full of passion and ambition. But at that moment, all of it turned into cold sweat. I didn't expect such an expert to rise in the mortal world. We are no match for him, no match for him. Beside him, Liang Zichen and the other 4 elders were also dumbfounded, and a chill ran down their spines. Especially Liang Zichen. Back then, he wanted to take revenge for the many disciples of Dian Tsang who had died in the hands of Jiang Tian on Mount Everest. Now it seemed that revenge was useless. If he rushed up, he would be instantly killed by Jiang Tian. At that moment, even the earth deity Situ Shao was shocked. He frowned and his heart was in turmoil. Jiang Tian had once killed his disciple Situ Yuanhao in the ancient Wudang. Of course, he knew how powerful Jiang Tian was. He was at least stronger than a human deity. The peak of the worldly immortal realm, he felt that he had already overestimated Jiang Tian. After all, Jiang Tian was too young. Even if he was a visitor from outer space, there were too few resources on Earth. It was very difficult for him to cultivate to the human deity realm. But now, he found that Jiang Tian was even more powerful than he had imagined. He was unfathomable. What about you? Sect leader of Amei, the #1 swordsman in the late Qing dynasty? Show me how shameless you are. Jiang Tian slapped him again. Chapter 754. Clang. The sound was like the evening drum and morning bell. It was not crisp, but the sound of metal and stone colliding. This was how Taichung summoning the astral wind to strengthen his body. He wanted to resist Jiang Tian's attack. Under the loud noise, a small hill under their feet was shattered. Among the flying snow and ice, countless boulders were blasted dozens of meters away. Ouch! Only then did the crowd realize the danger of the battle. This was simply destructive. Even though Hao Taichung summoned a gust of wind and activated his protective divine art, half of his face was still cracked by Jiang Tian's palm strike, and a few of his teeth, which were as sharp as swords, flew out. His steel-like beard was covered in blood. Do you admit defeat? Jiang Tian sneered mockingly. Aren't you very powerful? Show me what you're made of. Jiang Tian's tongue was vicious. You talk about the righteous sects and Mount Amei. You talk about me, Kang Te Chu, as an ant. Who is the ant now? Righteous sects and 1,000-year-old Mount Amei. What's so great about the sect leader? You're still letting me slap you. But your skin is a little thicker. You have the astral wind to protect your face. How can it not be thick? At this time, Song Lingshuang was stunned. Her stable worldview was about to collapse. She had never thought that the worthless Jiang Tian would be so powerful that he could slap Hao Taichung. After entering Mount Shuamei, she had heard too many stories about Hao Taichung. He was the instructor of the imperial bodyguards of the Guangxu Emperor. He once dominated Huaxia with one sword. He defeated immortal state grandmasters consecutively. He was known as the top swordsman of the Qing dynasty. In her heart, Hao Taichung was like a legend. He was powerful and unattainable. But in front of Jiang Tian, Hao Taichung was like a 3-year-old child facing Tyson. He was tortured and humiliated by Jiang Tian. I don't admit defeat. With his face covered in blood, Hao Taichung's originally ugly face became even more hideous and terrifying. He gnashed his teeth in anger. His hatred for Jiang Tian was monstrous. You've sealed my technique, so I can't use my Mount Shu sword art. If we fight, I may not lose to you. From his point of view, what he said was naturally correct. The sword Xiu of Amei was famous throughout the world. Even though they were not as powerful as the flying swords of Kunlun, they still had many sword techniques such as the art of controlling the sword. These sword techniques were all specialized in long-range attacks. Jiang Tian's mana was strong, but he might not be able to restrict the spiritual qi of heaven and earth on a large scale. He still had the advantage. Alright, your grandpa Jiang specializes in dealing with all kinds of disobedience. I'll give you a chance to display your Amei swordsmanship. Jiang Tian smiled contemptuously and kicked Hao Taichung in the chest. Whoosh! Hao Taichung was like a human cannonball. After flying for a kilometer, it smashed into a small mountain and fell into rolling boulders and snow. The entire area was dead silent. No one came back to their senses and looked at the snow and rocks in silence. Motherfucker, he was beaten even worse than a dog. A moment later, there was a loud bang. A crimson shadow broke through the snow and rocks and tore open the sky like a missile launched from a missile. Damn you, Heavenly Lord! Today, I'm going to tear you into pieces, Kang Tae-chu. Hao Taichung shouted at the top of his lungs. His voice was like rolling thunder, spreading out for dozens of miles, shaking countless icebergs within a radius of a few kilometers, causing the earth to quake and mountains to shake. Hao Taichung was too angry. His lungs were about to explode. He was a half-step Earth-level deity, the sect master of Ame, and he had been slapped in the face. Clank! He gritted his teeth and slapped the back of his head. A 3-inch crimson sword flew out from a cloud of blood mist. The small sword expanded in the wind and suddenly turned into a streak of red light. It swept across the sky and shot toward Jiang Tian. Blood Divine Sword. He has mastered the unique skill of the Ame sword sect, Blood Divine Sword. Zhou Zixuan shouted in horror. Hao Taichung has lost his mind facing an overlord like Kang Tae-chu. Li Jiuyo shook his head and sighed. His face was full of sorrow. The Blood God's sword was actually similar to Situ Yuanhao's blood condensation magic sword, but it was even stronger. The Blood Divine Sword was also a sword nourished by the blood essence of one's cultivation. Once it was activated, it would gather all of one's cultivation and form an attack that could destroy the world. But the most powerful part of it was the word, divine. When the owner infused part of his soul energy into the Blood Divine Sword, the sword would be like a quasi-spiritual artifact or even a spiritual artifact. The precision and ingenuity of the attack would be increased, making it impossible to defend against. However, the drawbacks were not small. Once it was used, it would be very harmful to Sun Hao's blood essence and soul energy. Cover the sky with one hand, seal thousands of miles. Facing this ferocious sword, Jiang Tian laughed mockingly and let out a low shout. In an instant, there was silence around Hao Taichung. Everything stopped. At this moment, one could clearly see that the hilt of the small sword was still in its original shape. At the back of the hilt, there were blood lines that were connected to Hao Taichung's acupoints and meridians. And the body of the sword had turned into extremely sharp blood-red lights. These lights were crystal clear, like melted red agate threads. There were thousands of them, densely packed, and they were more than a few hundred meters long. They meandered forward like the tentacles of a mollusk, giving people a feeling that they were alive. But these blood-red lights were extremely sharp. Each one of them could kill an immortal state warrior, pierce through gold and stone, and cut through everything. Many blood-red lights pierced toward Jiang Tian together, forming a blood-red chain. Ha, these bloodlines are a little interesting. Jiang Tian took a step forward and directly arrived in front of Hao Taichung. He flicked the blood-colored light with his finger, and it actually emitted a crisp sound, as if he was knocking on glass. Hao Taichung, are you convinced now? Jiang Tian's eyes were cold and he sneered. I'm convinced. I'm willing to give you the map of the ruins of immortality. Hao Taichung's body was confined. Only his eyes could move. His tongue was stiff, and he looked terrified. If he could move, he would have kowtowed to Jiang Tian and begged for mercy. At this time, everyone was shocked and couldn't believe it. Half a step to Earth Immortal. The leader of the Ame sword sect. But he was still trampled by Jiang Tian. This was incredible. If this news spread, it would shock the world. Are you convinced? Jiang Tian sneered and said, unfortunately, it's too late. Jiang Tian's 5 fingers were like hooks. He grabbed Hao Taichung's head and searched his mind with his divine sense. After finding the information he wanted, Jiang Tian pulled out Hao Taichung's head along with his spine. Who's still not convinced? Come up. Jiang Tian threw the bloody head and spine onto the ground, then stomped Hao Taichung's corpse into pieces and turned it into a pile of mush. After that, he swept the crowd with his gaze and shouted in a stern voice. Seeing this, Song Shuangyan was so shocked that her whole body trembled. She fell to the ground and her legs were so weak that she couldn't stand up. Hao Taichung was defeated and dead. If Jiang Tian wanted to kill her, who in the world could stop him? How Taichung was dead. Who in the world could be Jiang Tian's opponent? Perhaps only Lin Qingyang, the leader of Kunlun, and Yi Tianren and a few other powerful people in Hongmeng could. But they were all reclusive people. The point was, if Jiang Tian wanted to kill her, no one could stop him. Alas, as expected of the national hunter, as expected of an earth immortal. This old man concedes defeat. At this time, Zhou Zixuan's face was full of shock. Then, it turned into endless decadence. He bowed deeply to Jiang Tian to show his respect. In the face of Jiang Tian's power, he was completely desperate and didn't have the courage to fight. Master Kong, this old man concedes defeat. Even the arrogant Li Jiuyo was afraid and uneasy at this time. He didn't have the confidence to fight with Jiang Tian. How Taichung was a half-step earth immortal, and he was only at the peak of the human immortal. How Taichung was crushed by Jiang Tian. He didn't have much chance of winning. Zhou Zixuan, didn't you ask me to kowtow and admit my mistake? Who gave you the right to do so? Jiang Tian stepped in the air and came to Zhou Zixuan. He raised his hand and slapped him. Slap. Zhou Zixuan was slapped to the ground and his face was red. He was angry, but the next moment, he suppressed his anger and lowered his head. At the moment when Jiang Tian slapped him, he tried to dodge and use his secret skill to block, but he couldn't. The spiritual qi of heaven and earth around him was still confined by Jiang Tian's hand. He had no chance to resist at all. It could be said that if he showed the slightest dissatisfaction, he could only be crushed by Jiang Tian. Is Diansang so great? The sect leader is here, Liang Zichen and the other 5 elders are also here. If you have the guts, fight with me. Jiang Tian kicked Zhou Zixuan in the chest and made him roll on the ground. Then, he slapped Liang Zichen and the other 4 elders to the ground. Master Kong, we don't dare. Grandmaster Jiang, please quell your anger and spare our lives. In the face of such humiliation, Zhou Zixuan, Liang Zichen, and the others didn't even dare to refute. Instead, they knelt down in front of Jiang Tian and kept kowtowing to beg for mercy. Li Jiuyo. Where the plum blossoms pass, not a blade of grass grows. Fierce ghosts dominate the 9 nether. Jiang Tian came to Li Jiuyo again and raised his hand to slap him a few times. Master Kong, I don't dare. How dare an old man in front of you? Please spare the old man's life. Li Jiuyo was beaten until he screamed miserably. Blood spurted out of his nose and his teeth flew out. Master Kong, please stop hitting me. If you hit me again, I will be finished. He knelt on the ground, put his hands up in front of his chest, and swayed quickly, begging for mercy. He was terrified. After Jiang Tian slapped him, his cultivation was suppressed a little. After a few slaps, his cultivation fell continuously. Now, he was about to fall to the divine realm. This was too terrible. You are quite famous. Suppress the 9 underworlds. Why don't you show me how you suppress the 9 underworlds? Jiang Tian kicked him in the chest and shouted coldly, why don't you show me how you're suppressing me? Li Jiuyo was kicked until blood spurted out of his mouth. He flew hundreds of meters away like a golf ball. You called me an ant. Now you know who the ant is, right? Jiang Tian was not going to let him off after gaining the upper hand. He kicked him again, sending him rolling far away. I'm an ant, I'm a bug. Master Kong, please stop hitting me. I'm convinced, I'm really convinced. Li Jiuyo was lying on the ground like a dead dog. He was covered in blood and his hair was disheveled. Everyone was dumbfounded and couldn't believe it. Li Jiuyo was at the peak of the human immortal realm and the sect leader of the Tianshan sect. No one dared to provoke him in the whole northwest of Huaxia. But Jiang Tian was beating him like a stray dog. This was, like child's play. Chapter 755 You want to kill me and force me to hand over my cultivation method? What a joke. You really don't know who you are. Jiang Tian was disdainful and said with a mocking expression, the person who can snatch my cultivation technique has not been born yet. For a moment, there was a dead silence. No one dared to say a word. They just knelt on the ground and looked at Jiang Tian in horror. At this time, Song Shuangyan was scared out of her wits and subconsciously wanted to escape. However, she suddenly found that she couldn't move at all, as if she had been immobilized. Jiang Tian, what did you do to me? Song Shuangyan was trembling with fear and screamed in a sobbing voice. After I finish this fight, I will settle accounts with you. Jiang Tian smiled coldly and then ignored her. His fighting spirit was rising steadily. He looked at Situ Xiao and said, Fellow cultivator Situ, today, only you are qualified to make me fight with you. Let's fight. If Jiang Tian had said this before this fight, everyone would have thought that he was talking nonsense. They would have snorted at him and scolded him for boasting shamelessly. But now, Jiang Tian had suppressed the wolf ancestor with a raise of his hand, killed Hao Taichong with a flick of his finger, and slapped Zhou Zixuan and Li Jiuyo. All of them were shocked and terrified, and they felt that Jiang Tian's words were completely natural. Situ Zhao's face turned solemn as he cupped his fists and bowed. His face was full of reverence as he said, Situ Xiao, seek Grandmaster Zhang's guidance. Sorry to offend you. As soon as he said that, the whole place became silent. Everyone's faces were filled with excitement and shock. Jiang Tian was known as Earth Immortal Jiang, and Situ Xiao was said to have stepped into the Earth Immortal realm as early as the end of the Qing dynasty. An Earth Immortal was a figure that only appeared in legends. They were almost like legends. Today, two Earth Immortals were about to fight. If news of this got out, it would definitely shake the world. This was just too exciting. This battle was an exchange of pointers, a contest, a showdown between the two strongest people on this planet, but at the same time, it would also determine the ownership and control of the Sword Tomb. As for the Sword Tomb, it was rumored that it was the place where a celestial immortal had fallen. After entering, no matter if it was Jiang Tian or Situ Xiao, both of them would obtain boundless resources and fortuitous encounters as resources to advance into the heavenly immortal realm. After this battle, a celestial immortal would definitely be born. The battle between earthly immortals is finally about to break out. There hasn't been such a battle in the past 500 years. I didn't expect that I would be able to witness such a brilliant battle in this age of chaos. This trip was not in vain. That's right, it's an unprecedentedly brilliant battle. Meanwhile, Zhou Zixuan, Li Jiuyo, and the other experts were looking forward to it. Their hands were trembling slightly. This battle was more brilliant than the battle between Jiang Tian and Zhang Qianlei, compared to the battle between Jiang Tian and Dong Bing and the Blue Storm. This was a battle between earthly immortals. A battle between earthly immortals and holy kings had not happened in the past few hundred years. Even if it had happened before, no one had witnessed it with their own eyes. There were only some unfounded legends. To these experts, watching such a battle was a great fortuitous encounter. Those human immortals could even go one step further and step into the half-step earthly immortal realm. Jiang Tian and Situ Xiao stood face to face with a distance of 1 mile between them. However, neither of them made a move. It seemed that they were accumulating their strength and waiting for something. In the wind and snow, the two tall and majestic figures were like two lofty and steep mountains in the eyes of the crowd. They were unforgettable and filled with reverence. At this time, all the experts began to retreat outside the circle. Originally, they were about 1 kilometer away from Jiang Tian. Now, they retreated more than 10 miles and stood on a snowy mountain, watching with binoculars. Hao Taichong, a half-step earthly immortal, could destroy a city and a mountain with a sword. When earthly immortals fought, it was terrifying and full of destructive power. Most likely, all living things within a radius of 10 miles would be annihilated without any chance of survival. Under Jiang Tian's divine sense, they also took Song Shuangyan away. Of course, her range of movement was restricted by Jiang Tian's secret method, so there was no way she could escape. Master Kong, I'm going to make a move. I hope you won't hold back and fight with me with all your strength. Suddenly, Situ Xiao said seriously. In an instant, there was a rumbling sound. In the thunderous sound, a surge of murderous aura surged into the sky. Murderous thunder. This murderous aura was not genuine qi, but pure invisible spiritual energy and willpower. However, it was like a fire beacon, soaring into the sky as high as 300 meters, tearing through the wind and snow. What a terrifying murderous aura! Zhou Zixuan was frightened and looked up. With this point alone, Situ Xiao was far superior to Hao Taichong. When an earthly immortal is angry, his murderous aura will cover the sky as high as 300 meters. The muscles in the corners of his eyes were trembling. Compared with Situ Xiao, who was full of murderous aura and had a calm face but a thunderstorm in his heart, Hao Taichong was like a 3-year-old brat who squeaked. Situ Xiao fought against the Qing dynasty and restored the Ming dynasty. It is said that he killed 50,000 Qing soldiers with one sword. Li Jiuyo's face was also full of fear and solemnity. He said bitterly, this murderous aura can only be cultivated by killing tens of thousands of people. He was famous for his fierceness and was said to be able to frighten the ghosts in the 9 serenities. However, compared with Situ Xiao's murderous aura, his murderous aura was just like playing house. It was not worth mentioning. The other powerhouses were all shocked and excited. The scene in front of them was too shocking. Jiang Tian will die, right? He must die, he must die. This is Situ Xiao. Who can compare with his murderous aura? Look at Jiang Tian, he has no murderous aura at all. Weakling. Ant. Song Shuangyan's beautiful face lost all color. Her mouth was muttering incantations as she crazily cursed Jiang Tian. She was also comforting herself, hoping that Situ Xiao would kill Jiang Tian. In the field, Jiang Tian's expression did not change. He said calmly, Situ Xiao, the greatest respect for an opponent is to fight with all your strength and not hold back. Don't worry. I respect you, so I will not be polite. Good. I have not met a worthy opponent for 300 years. My life is lonely and I am as lonely as a living dead. Today, it is my great fortune to have a martial arts competition with a peerless powerhouse like Master Kong. Situ Xiao smiled with emotion. He was heroic and generous. He had the air of a scholarly hero from ancient times. He suddenly made his move. Clang! He directly punched out. This punch was not fancy at all. It was simple and direct, like a retired old man practicing boxing in the park. It had a sense of returning to simplicity. But there was a loud bang. The void cracked. A big hole was torn in the 1-mile area between Jiang Tian and Situ Xiao, and it became a vacuum. The flying snow, which was originally like catkins, burst out like shrapnel after being hit by the violent punch. It pierced many small holes in the solid ice and the ground. The surging and vast genuine qi formed a transparent fist, which was the size of a millstone. It pulled a white turbulence in the air, and it was like a high-speed train. Wherever the giant fist passed, a deep hole was plowed in the ground. Countless boulders were shattered, like a string of firecrackers. Too weak. Jiang Tian just flicked his finger. Clang! The golden light flickered, and a finger light condensed from the 7th metal true essence appeared in the shape of a golden sword. The golden sword was engraved with ancient Tao patterns. It shone brightly and was 10 meters long. It was like a missile that pierced through the sky and pierced toward the giant fist. Boom! The genuine qi giant fist was penetrated, and then it exploded uncontrollably. A huge mushroom cloud rose into the sky, and the aurora in the sky was shaken and distorted. The battle was like a nuclear explosion, earth-shattering. Within a few miles of the surrounding area, the ground trembled violently, and a snow mountain hundreds of meters high collapsed directly, and some were shaved off. Countless ice, boulders, and snowflakes were thrown away, mixed in the billowing air waves, drifting and lashing out into the distance. Even if the spectators were separated by 5 kilometers, they still felt a scorching heat, and they were thrown off their feet by the waves of air. The ground beneath their feet shook intensely like the skin of a drum, and they couldn't even stand stably. Oh my God! It's terrible. This is definitely beyond the power of a strategic missile. A Russian mixed martial arts master exclaimed. His face turned pale and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. An Earth-level deity was too powerful. Fortunately, they had run far away, otherwise, they would have been crushed. The Wolf King's forehead was also covered in cold sweat. Jiang Tian's power was too terrifying. If he fought with him, he wouldn't be able to withstand a single blow. So this is the power of an Earth-level deity. Its destructive power. Zhou Zixuan exclaimed. An Earth-level deity, except for the superpowers, the armies of ordinary countries are powerless. Li Jiuyo exclaimed. Then, a figure rose to the sky like a dragon and reached 400 meters high. It was Situ Xiao. If one looked closely, they would find that there was a big hole in his shirt under his ribs and there were mottled blood stains. It seemed that he had suffered a minor injury. Who's the winner of this round? Could it be that Mr. Jiang has fallen? Anfia exclaimed. No one could see clearly in that area. Anfia and the others stood on tiptoe and looked curiously. He must be dead. Who can withstand such a powerful punch? Song Shuangyan gritted her teeth and gloated. But then, her smile froze. Kang Teichu is stronger. Li Jiuyo rolled his eyes and said with difficulty. He only flicked his finger, but he broke Situ Xiao's punch. And, it seems that Situ Xiao is injured. He can hurt an Earth-level deity. What kind of cultivation art does Master Kong practice? Zhou Zixuan exclaimed. That's impossible. How could Situ Xiao be inferior to an ant like him? Song Shuangyan was unwilling to admit defeat. She waved her hands and screamed hysterically. An Earth-level deity's body was as tough as diamond. It was no longer a mortal body. It was impervious to fire and water and could withstand artillery fire and even missiles. Their bodies wouldn't rot after 100 years. And yet, he was injured by Jiang Tian's finger. That was unbelievable. She didn't know that Jiang Tian's golden finger aura was so sharp that it could cut through anything in the world. It also contained Tao patterns. No matter how many divine powers Situ Xiao had, they were all dissolved in an instant. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.